From Puck writes, Kevin, I'm with Stan on this. Ride it out with Mariota, sign him, and then have a legit competition entering 2026. Good morning, everybody. That HBO Hard Knocks NFC East episode 1 was really good. It's much better in the regular season than it is in the summer. I've gotten used to I got used to watching Hard Knocks for a long period of time over the summer. And then over the last few years, I've checked out. I think it's kind of boring. It's the same thing. You know, if there's an interesting storyline with the Jets a couple of summers ago and Aaron Rodgers, et cetera, but I haven't watched it a lot. And I'm wondering, Max, was last year the first year they did the in-season in-division with the AFC North?
Yes, it was. It was the first time that they were doing it.
Yeah, I watched a couple of those and I thought they were good. So for those that don't know what I'm talking about, Hard Knocks does an in-season now for the second straight year, and they're focusing on the NFC East. Hour-long episode last night. I guess they'll take it to the end of the regular season. Is that what they do?
Yeah.
Not exactly sure. But it's well done. It's well produced. I actually was reading a story that Tom Shad, I think, wrote for the Washington Post, that the producer of this Hard Knocks in season is actually a Skins fan. He's from here, grew up in Reston. But it was well done. There was some really good Dan Quinn, really good stuff during practice last week leading into the Denver game. Quinn talking with Peters about being excited that he had all these players back out on to the practice field, singling out 17, as in Terry McLaurin. They gave Tavita Pritchard a really nice, congratulations in their big conference room, meeting room to Tavita Pritchard, the quarterback's coach, going to be the next head coach at Stanford. There was a lot of good stuff. And then the post game from the Denver game on Sunday night, Dan Quinn had an interesting way of describing the moment, which I will share with you before this first hour of the show is up. It's kind of the way I felt after the game as well, and I think maybe the way many of you felt as well. Tim Murray, old friend, old producer, old on the air talent here at 980, been out in Vegas working for Brent Musburger's Visa Network for many years now, 6-7 years, something like that. He's going to join us in about 25 minutes to talk some college football. Of course, we'll do it with Denton tomorrow, and with Denton, we'll look ahead to the championship games. But there's a very interesting situation brewing with the college football 12-team playoff. It involves Notre Dame and Miami. We'll have that conversation with Tim in about 20 minutes. So Puck is suggesting that Mariota be signed and then enter next off season in a competition with Jaden Daniels to be the starter. Is off of an email I read yesterday with Tommy on the podcast, which I'm going to read right now. It came from Stan in Seattle. Stan said, I'm a transplanted DMVer living in Seattle, but still follow my Redskins. I listen every day, but my favorite days are when Tom's on the show with you. I'm coming, and then he writes, I've never written to you before, but after the loss to Denver, I needed to do it because I just can't believe that I feel this, but Marcus Mariota gives this team this year the best chance to win. He's a better passer than Jaden, a better reader of defenses. He's not afraid to make the tight window throws. And I think you'll agree with this. He's a much better runner, especially on designed runs. He played the best game of any quarterback this year for our team on Sunday night. I'd stick with Mariota the rest of the year and let Daniels heal properly. I would also sign Mariota to a contract extension now, or they might lose him in free agency to a team that needs a starter. So thank you, Stan, and thank you, Puck, for following up on that. First of all, I totally agree that they should try to sign Mariota sooner rather than later. And I say that not knowing anything about the relationship Marcus Mariota has, along with his agent, with Adam Peters in the front office. I mean, this may be a foregone conclusion, whether it gets done now or when the season ends. Maybe they've already kind of, talked about, we want you back, we're going to figure it out, etc. He signed a 1-year, $8 million deal to come back for this year. And there's no doubt in my mind, and I think most of you would say the same thing, they are in good shape with Marcus Mariota as the backup quarterback to Jaden Daniels. This is just the perfect fit, as we've talked about going back to last year. He seems to be happy. Yes, the Cliff Kingsbury offense is the perfect fit for him. But I think, if for whatever reason, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, if Cliff Kingsbury were to move on and end up coaching somewhere else in college or a pro job. Look, I know that some of you aren't, thrilled with the job Cliff Kingsbury's done. Personally, I don't know how you even begin to evaluate the job that he's done, given how many players have been out, including, by the way, his rookie of the year quarterback, who's now missed 6.5 of the 12 games that have been played. Offensively, I talked about this a few weeks ago. They're like number 2 in the red zone. They're not, a lower rated offensive team. Per DVOA right now, I think they're 19th per DVOA offensively. But there's so much that goes into that, starting with the fact that they really have a terrible defense. They don't score as much as they should because they've had kicking issues at times this year. But anyway, I digress. If Cliff were to leave, I guess there's a chance if he were in the pros somewhere that he would take somebody like Marcus Mariota with him. But back to Stan's email. Yeah, I agree on the Mariota contract extension. I disagree with virtually everything else you said, other than I like having Tom on my podcast twice a week as well. It's one of my favorite things that I get to do. And we've been doing shows together for, 17 years now, something like that. 2008, 2009, whatever it was. Anyway, so some of the assertions you make. He's not a better passer than Jaden Daniels. Dude, what have you been watching? I mean, I loved the performance. I thought the performance the other night was first rate, even with the terrible decision early in the football game. I absolutely loved what Marcus Mariota did. It was actually in some ways kind of out of character for him because he turned into a bit of a gunslinger. And that's not always been him. He's been at his best, if you go back to the Tennessee years, when he was, a true dual threat quarterback. Whether he was actually running a lot or not, the presentation of Marcus Mariota as a dual threat quarterback was outstanding. But like he is, he's got several seasons where he's right around the 60% completion percentage mark. Not, terrific. 63% for his career. Here, he was 77.3% last year. Of course, he didn't start a game last year. He came in, in the first game that Jaden got hurt in against Carolina. And then he played again. Why am I blanking on the games? He played the Dallas game, the second half of last year. And what was the other game that he played in last year? That was it, right? What game? He played in the Dallas game and the Carolina game. He came in early in the Carolina game, and he came in the second half of the Dallas game. I think that's it. And he had a very high completion percentage, as Jaden did in the system last year. He's not a better thrower of the football. He's a good thrower of the football, and he really looks good this year. Really looks good throwing the football this year. It's the same thing that is kind of plagued him at times during his career is some of the decision making. We've seen that, the pick 6 against Dallas, the pick in overtime against Miami, the pick on the opening drive the other night. That's kind of plagued him during his career, but I think he's playing really well. He's not a better passer than Jaden Daniels. There's nothing, no one would say about Marcus Mariota's career. He was a highly accurate thrower, consistently accurate thrower of the football, even though we've seen him do that here. Again, back to Kingsbury and the scheme. Cliff's good at what he does, people, whether you think so or not. He's not a better reader of defenses, although if he were, it would be understandable. He's played in the league for 10 years. Jaden's in his second year. But the absolute LOL moment of this note from you, Stan, is when you write, He's not afraid to make tight window throws. Jaden was 5th in the league last year. 5th in the league last year in tight window throws. So don't tell me about tight window throws, all right? And I think you'll agree with this. He's a much better runner, especially on designed runs. No, he's not. He's not a much better runner than Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels is a lethal, electric runner. Marcus Mariota is a really good runner, though. He is. And I actually think with respect to one particular play, zone read option, I think he's actually a better decision maker or a more consistent decision maker, accurate decision maker than Jaden's been at the NFL level. I mean, it's what Mariota's done throughout his career. Jaden's done it throughout his career as well. Marcus Mariota was really known as being a true dual threat quarterback. Jaden, some of his best runs are scrambles off schedule. Mariota's doing that too. I'm not knocking him. None of this is to knock Marcus Mariota. I love him. I didn't have a problem when they signed him. Many of you did. I never had a problem with Marcus Mariota. I always thought he was at least a low-end NFL starter. I actually thought he played pretty well in Atlanta before they benched him for Desmond Ridder. That didn't work out very well. After, really, they came here and lost on Thanksgiving weekend in 2022. You know, when he had the ball tipped by Daron Payne at the line of scrimmage and picked in the end zone at the end where they would have won that football game. I like Marcus Mariota a lot. This is the kind of stuff that really, all due respect, Stan and Puck and those of you that feel this way, this to me, I'm not going to really go on the attack here because I think it's absurd. But I think it's really a result of being a Skins fan for the last quarter century and what comes with that. There is this reaction to immediately assume the worst. And this season, the 5.5 games, but more importantly, the 6.5 lost games with Jaden Daniels is, very much leading to the assumption of the worst. This is 2012, 2013 all over again. This is never going to work if he doesn't learn to protect himself. This is the major sophomore slump regression. Last year was a fluke. All of that stuff. Sorry to tell you, but last year was real. Last year was absolutely real. And, what they faced in terms of the teams, there was good fortune along the way. Nobody's disputing that. The same good fortune that New England's having this year. It's a little bit different, but there's that low-end schedule. They're taking advantage of it, and they're having a great season. They're actually on the verge of having a better regular season than Washington had because they're going to win a division, and they're going to host playoff games. Washington didn't have that luxury being in the same division last year with Philadelphia, the team that ended up winning the Super Bowl. Yeah, this is, to me, I'm not going to refer to it ever as a step-back season. I'm going to refer to it as an aberration until otherwise proven, because this is, for all the reasons that we have talked about for a while now, this is, a lost season at 3-9 because Jaden Daniels hasn't played enough. That's the reason they're 3-9. He hasn't played, and their best players around him haven't played enough football. That's what happens when your best players actually don't play in the games because they're hurt, is that you end up not being as good as you thought you were going to be. It's kind of simple, I think. But thanks, Stan, for the note. And I do agree with the Marcus Mariota. Get him signed, bring him back next year. And here's one thing I wanted to mention. It's interesting because I had a conversation with somebody yesterday after the show about this. I forget who the caller was who suggested we're going to learn a lot about, whether or not Adam Peters is on a budget after this particular season more than we have in previous seasons. And this goes back to, the idea before they even, attacked the Terry McLaurin contract situation. And you had just Javon Kinlaw as kind of the outlier on a longer term deal. I threw it out there not knowing anything. And I don't even honestly think that there is something to this, but it's something that occurred to me. And one of our callers yesterday brought it back into the conversation. And that is, could there be a situation going on right now where after spending $6 billion on the team, after spending already north of $100 million just to make Northwest Field safe enough to allow spectators to come and watch games. And now with the big expenditure over the next few years, $2+ billion for the stadium, and what they're going to have to come up with when Jaden Daniels is eligible for a deal, which would be after next season, after 2026, in the offseason of 2027, which could be an outlay of somewhere in the neighborhood of $500 million. Now, that won't be guaranteed, but a lot of it is going to be guaranteed. And is it possible that we've seen a lot of these one-year deals with, kind of base salary driven contracts because they don't want to spend a lot of money? I don't think that's true at all. I don't. But Nikki Jabvala said something to me last week on the show. She said that, it would have been nice had they just come up with the extra $500,000 to keep Olamide Zaccheaus here. And it was strange. I thought that was a lock that he was going to be back. I knew, and everybody that knows anything about the team knew that they loved him a lot for not just his production on the field, but they like him as a person. They think he's incredibly smart. They think he's the right guy to have in the locker room, and he's also pretty good on the field. And it was like a foregone conclusion that they were going to bring him back and that there would probably be some interest. And ultimately, he took a little bit more money and maybe for a better opportunity in Chicago. But Nikki said that to me last week, and I was thinking, as I was just talking about Marcus Mariota and the need to sign him to a contract, is $8 million last year. What if it's $12 million this year off of him getting all of these starts? And maybe there being some competition with other teams, not only for perhaps an opportunity to compete somewhere to start next year at 32 years old, but maybe a bigger deal to come in and back somebody up. So I hope that we don't get down to one of those Zaccheaus situations, if that's the way it played out, and you end up coming up $1 million short. He signs $1 million, 1 year, $12 million. Or somebody gives him 2 years, $22 million, $24 million, and Washington only wants to go 1 year, $10 million, or something like that. Mariota's a significant signature in this offseason. They have to retain him. Looking at the list that I went over a week and a half ago, like, to me, Mariota, Chris Paul of the unrestricted free agents are absolute givens. You've got to bring both of them back. I think Jacob Martin has earned his way back at least as a rotational guy, if not a starter, depending on what happens, with the other DN spot. Dorrance Armstrong hopefully comes back. Hopefully he's healthy. He's ready to go in 2026. But you don't have another defensive end under contract right now. In terms of, a potential starter or a key rotational guy. McNichols, Rodriguez, Tress Way are also unrestricted free agents. And then Debo will be an interesting conversation when we get there. Tunsil has to get signed to a contract extension. I don't care how old he's going to be for the back part of a 3 to 4 year contract extension. This position, left tackle, and having an elite level pass protecting left tackle, there are 6 or 7 of them in the NFL. And every year there are only 6 or 7 that can do it at that level. When you have one, you've got to keep one. They didn't trade for Laramie Tunsil to play this year, next year, and then enter unrestricted free agency in 2027 as a 33-year-old. They didn't. So they got to sign Tunsil. I think Luvu's going to be an interesting conversation on whether or not to extend him. So there's a lot going on. We're going to learn something. I don't think that's where we're going to land, meaning I don't think we're going to end up having conversations in, say, April, before the draft. My God, why aren't they spending money? Why aren't they spending money? Why are they doing all of these one-year deals or these super short-term deals again that don't include a lot of guaranteed money? I don't think we're going to be there this year. I think we were there in year one because they were just recalibrating. They were trying to figure it out. I think we were there in year two in part. Look, they did end up paying Debo for 1 year. And they traded a lot of compensation and draft picks. That doesn't equal money, but they did take on some big contracts, certainly in the Tunsil current deal. But yeah, I think that, this was more about adding a few key pieces because I think they felt like if they were healthy, they could compete for something as soon as this year. But I think going into this offseason, there's now a true, real kind of overview of what they have in that locker room talent-wise, and there has to be a significant upgrade in talent. Forget about just getting everybody back healthy. That'll help, obviously. This would be a different season. Maybe not a contending season, but it would be a different season had they been healthy. But they need more than just good health next year. They need a pass rusher. They need an edge setter or two. They might need another corner. They might need another safety. I mean, they might need another interior defensive lineman or two, depending on what happens with Payne. They're going to be able to free up 19 or so million, letting Lattimore go. If Payne doesn't survive, and I have a feeling he won't, that's another 17 million, add 36 million to 90. You're at 126. You're right there in the top 4 or 5, top 3 really in terms of available cap space. Allegretti saves you, 4 or 5 million, something like that by releasing him. So they've got some opportunities, to really create more cap space. At the same time, Tunsil, Luvu, and then going out and spending. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out in what will be, the offseason we weren't anticipating a few months back, but one that will be super scrutinized from so many different angles. By the way, I had somebody mention to me just about how good a couple of the players that weren't drafted have been, singling out Jeremy McNichols in particular. He was an Adam Peters player and considered to be just a guy when they signed him. He's been a lot more than that. Man, does he seem to figure out a way on 3rd and 10 to make a catch and move the sticks. The runs he's had, some of them have been the most spectacular runs of the season. Including that, 3-tackle break in the Raider game for the touchdown. All right, switch subjects when we come back. Tim Murray is going to jump on with us. The college football rankings came out last night, and there's a real situation brewing, especially if BYU loses the Big 12 championship game to Texas Tech, and they're a big underdog in that game on Saturday at noon. We'll talk some college football with Timmy next. Tim Murray is one of my favorite people to have on the show. Tim is a college football expert. He's a college football handicapper. And he's one of my good friends in this business. Of course, he was here at Team 980 for many years as an on-air host with Nick Ashew and others, and as a producer. And he's been now with Brent Musburger's VSiN network for 6-7 years, something like that. You can watch him on VSiN's College Football Tailgate Show Saturdays at 9 a.m. He's the host of VSiN Primetime, 7 p.m. weeknights. You can listen to that on Sirius XM 158 at 1 Tim Murray on X on Twitter. So we got the college football rankings last night, and there are a couple of situations that are very interesting, but I want to start with the biggie, and that is, Notre Dame being ahead of Miami at this point. For those of you, who are unfamiliar with how this works, it's a 12-team playoff. We'll get into the conference bids, but they're going to basically seed them based on the strength of these teams. It's not going to be like last year where a conference champion has an automatic top 4 seed. The best part of this, Timmy and I have been talking about this for years, is there may be no better, night and day in sports than December 19th and December 20th this year with, 4 games in the actual sites. Home sites of the first round higher seeded teams, which is always fun. By the way, just real quickly, December 20th, the Skins Eagles game, Commanders Eagles game, 5:00. That's obvious. The Bears Packers are the other game. They are in the prime time slot. So no prime time on that Saturday, December 20th for Washington, Philadelphia. A 5:00 start right in the middle of Saturday's college football playoff triple header. All right, I want to go through a couple of these situations that are brewing. Let's start with Notre Dame, Miami. Notre Dame currently a couple of spots ahead of Miami. BYU is the linchpin here. If they were to upset Texas Tech, perhaps both of them are out. If they don't beat Texas Tech and they're a big underdog, the committee's going to have to choose between Notre Dame and Miami. And for those that don't know, way back in August, Miami beat Notre Dame. So spell it out for everybody and then give me your thoughts on what will happen and what should happen.
So you laid it out pretty well. Right now, the 9, 10, 11, 12 is kind of the discussion right now. Oklahoma is sitting there at 8. They feel secure in their spot. The reason 9 comes into the question, Kevin, is Adam's my podcast host. For some reason, I want to call you a wrong name.
It's
Kevin.
Okay. I don't care what you call me as long as you call me.
I mean, I think you do to an extent, but number 9 is Alabama, and they play Georgia on Saturday in the SEC Championship. It's a rematch of a game that Alabama won earlier this year. And if they were to win that game, obviously not only would they catapult up, they'd probably get a bye. But the question is, what if they lose that game? Does the committee move Alabama down? And then the BYU discussion that you brought up is a really interesting one, because if BYU beats Texas Tech, I believe that both BYU and Texas Tech get into the playoff. Texas Tech right now is 11-1. They're sitting at number 4. The committee is very high on Texas Tech. Texas Tech's lone loss came to Arizona State when they had a backup quarterback as their starter. So right. I'm sure that's being factored in. So I think to your initial point, if BYU beats Texas Tech, I think our field is set and Notre Dame and Miami are left out. That is my belief. The question is, what if BYU loses? And as you pointed out, they're about a 2-touchdown underdog to Texas Tech. I think the worry for Notre Dame fans or bettors who bet on Notre Dame to make the playoff, whatever, is if you finally get the Notre Dame Miami next to each other situation, that is the time where the committee finally says, okay, head to head now is involved. We're going to flip them. You got to remember back real quickly to the start of the college football playoff rankings. The first installment of them came out in early November, and it was the week after Miami lost to SMU on the road. Miami was 6-2, came in at number 18. Notre Dame was 6-2, came in at 10. Neither team has lost since. Miami has looked very strong over the final month of the season. Notre Dame has just plugged away, won every game by double digits. But now the head-to-head might finally come into conversation. So my gut tells me, Kevin, is that when you look at the situation that is brewing, if Alabama wins against Georgia and BYU loses to Texas Tech, I have a gut feeling that they've hopped Miami over Notre Dame. Now, the question that's been brought up, Kevin, and it's fair, is, well, why wouldn't they just done it already? And I think that's a fair question to ask. Why have they continued to keep Notre Dame ahead of Miami? And why would a week where neither one of them is playing lead to this ultimately being, flipped? I understand on a text exchange with a good friend, and he said head-to-head is the only thing that matters. Everybody's been screaming that from the mountaintops. And it feels like it might ultimately come to fruition on the final Sunday if Notre Dame and Miami are next to each other 10-11 in the rankings. So I think if you're a Notre Dame fan, you're hoping for Alabama to get blown out and then have them drop from 9 back to 10.
I got to jump in on the Alabama. I'm going to come back to the BYU losing and the decision between Notre Dame and Miami. Alabama went to Georgia in the regular season and won.
Yep.
There's no chance that Alabama losing to Georgia, from my standpoint, I'm not saying that there won't be a chance within that committee, and I want to know what you think, because it sounds like you're leaning towards if Bama gets blown out, they might be out of this thing. I mean, if that's the case, go ahead.
I don't think they'll be out of it, Kevin. I think they'll lead to being the buffer between Notre Dame and Miami. So this is why I think people probably are collectively rolling their eyes, being like, "What the hell are you guys talking about? Why is this even a thing?" And this is kind of the corner we backed ourselves into with college football. My gut tells me Alabama jumping Notre Dame this past week. And by the way, the committee is just hilarious. The reason Alabama jumped Notre Dame this week because they had a quote impressive win against Auburn. They were outgained by 120 yards.
Yeah, they could have easily lost that game. Easily.
Lead. Auburn's a 5-7 football team, but hey, it's a rivalry game, so that was impressive. I think they jumped Bama over Notre Dame to give them a little bit of a buffer if they were to get blown out, where Alabama stays in the field, but they allow Notre Dame to hop back over them to number 9. The committee, apparently, the hottest contention last night in that room was Notre Dame versus Alabama, and they popped Alabama ahead of Notre Dame. So I agree with you. I don't think Alabama misses the field.
That's good, because I was thinking about, as you were saying that, I was thinking if Alabama, after beating Georgia in Athens between the hedges in the regular season, lost in the SEC title game and got bounced from the field, we would eventually, this might lead to the abolishing of these conference championship games, because Ole Miss and Oklahoma, who are not playing in the SEC title game, they are safely in the field. And if Bama had been, let's just say, A&M didn't lose to Texas, as we both called would happen on Friday night, and A&M was in the championship game against Georgia, Bama would have been safely in the field. They cannot penalize Alabama for having qualified for the SEC title game against a team they've already beaten.
Well, that was the argument last year too, right? It was SMU versus Alabama for the final at-large bid.
Right.
SMU had lost to Clemson by 3 in the ACC championship game, and Alabama was saying we should be in. SMU was saying
SMU didn't have a win as impressive as Bama's win at Georgia.
I think I agree with you. I think Alabama is in the field. I think they're comfortably in the field. My point is, if you're a Notre Dame fan, you're hoping for Alabama to lose because you need a buffer, in my opinion. I think Notre Dame needs a buffer between Miami. If they can keep someone in between them, and that also leads to the question about BYU. So if you're the committee, you penalize BYU for playing a game.
Your phone's getting a little
Saturday.
bit. Your phone's getting a little bit sideways here. Let's get you back to whatever spot you were in for the first 10 minutes of this. I want to spell it out for everybody again. BYU is in the Big 12. First of all, for those of you who don't know, Texas Tech in the Big 12 had the best Big 12 season. They are 11-1. As Timmy said, they lost at Arizona State during the regular season. They crushed BYU. BYU's only loss was in Lubbock. They lost 29-7. But BYU didn't lose another game. They finished second. So there's a rematch in the Big 12 championship game, 12 noon on Saturday. Texas Tech's a 13-point favorite. If they win that game, BYU's out with their second loss. By the way, just personally, Tim, I don't think BYU is very good. I think Notre Dame would beat BYU by 2 touchdowns. I think Miami might beat BYU as well. But I want to get to just the assumption if BYU wins, Notre Dame and Miami are out. You've already mentioned that. But if BYU loses, either Miami or Notre Dame is in, and then we get to, the rankings, and they'll be side by side. As you said, they're not side by side currently. Notre Dame is at 10 and Miami's at 12 and BYU's in between. So how would this is where it gets, to the point where I personally feel right now that Notre Dame's a better team than Miami. I think they'd be a solid favorite over the Canes if they played them. But they lost on Labor Day weekend all the way back at the end of August in a great football game, by the way. A phenomenal 27-24 game in Miami. It was a home game for Miami. So what do you think would happen? What do you think should happen if we get to those two teams, if BYU loses?
Yeah, hopefully the connection's a little
Much
bit better. Right better. All right. I haven't moved, by the way. It's just gotta love technology these days. Look, as I think a number of your listeners may know, I'm a huge Notre Dame fan. I was actually at the Notre Dame Miami game Labor Day weekend. Right. And look, Miami was the better football team. And I was texting with a buddy of mine. And I'm saying, what's frustrating before I answer your question is that if Miami just took care of business, this really wouldn't be a conversation, right? Because Miami would get the auto bid with the ACC, but they have a dope on the sidelines named Mario Cristobal that allows them to lose games they shouldn't lose. And by the way, the ACC is awful this year.
Well, Carson Beck killed him in the Louisville and in the SMU game, and I like Carson Beck.
Yeah. So look, you're allowed a mulligan.
Carson Beck threw 4 picks against Louisville on that Thursday night or Friday night game
as a 2-touchdown favorite in that game. But regardless, if they're side by side, and look, the metrics are very comparable at this point. I agree with you. I think Notre Dame, if you ask anyone in the gambling world where Notre Dame is, they're a top 3 or 4 football team right now in college football. And that's odds makers, that's professional handicappers. And, but they did play a football game. And I am of the belief that, hey, games have to matter. And if they're side by side, I think you probably give the lean to Miami here. You look at the metrics; they're pretty comparable. They're
almost identical. Strength of record, strength of schedule, almost identical.
FPI: Notre Dame 3, Miami 7. Strength of record: Notre Dame 13, Miami 14. Strength of schedule: 42 for Notre Dame, 44 for Miami. Sagarin: Notre Dame 2, Miami 6. Game control: Notre Dame 5, Miami 6. SP plus: Notre Dame 5, Miami 9. I think I think the worst case scenario for Notre Dame fans, to be honest, is also if they're side by side. And I want to throw this out there, and I'm curious your thoughts on this. If Virginia loses to Duke, Duke is currently unranked. James Madison is currently 25th. So people have to remember this, Kevin. The bylaws state that the top 5 conference champions get in. It does not say that all 4 power conferences get in. So there is a scenario brewing that if Duke, as a 3.5-point underdog, beats Virginia on Saturday, that the ACC could be left out. And there's a belief out there that if that were to happen, that the ACC would step in and say, you guys can't shut us out from this thing. You got to put Miami in over Notre Dame. Like, there's the conspiracy theories, all of that. I've heard the ones too. You're not going to leave Notre Dame out because they're a massive brand and they're going to bring in massive ratings. Look, I don't know. I don't know how this whole thing plays out. I mean, it's also fair to ask this too, Kevin. If Notre Dame should be behind Miami, why aren't they behind them now? Like, why is it going to be Sunday, the final day that they finally make this move for the committee? I don't know. I mean, my gut tells me if Notre Dame and Miami are side by side on Sunday, Miami will pop Notre Dame, and you'll hear the committee chair come out and say, well, we finally had them side by side, and head to head ultimately came into discussion.
Yeah, you made a good point. The fact that they have kept it where it's been, with Notre Dame ahead of Miami has been part of the reason that this is brewing. And then when they get side by side, if BYU loses and Notre Dame's 10, Miami's, let's just say 11, and Bama could, we'll see what happens with Bama if they lose. They're in though. I'm convinced of it.
I agree.
Here's
I
the thing.
Bama's in.
Yeah. Here's the thing that I understand. It's like, what are we doing here if head-to-head doesn't matter? And that's the last thing left to sort of decide the difference between the two teams because everything else is so close. I get that. And if they end up choosing Miami over Notre Dame, I'll be fine with that. There was a point in the season where I actually thought Miami was the best team in the country. I was wrong about that. They're not. They make too many mistakes and their head coach is a dope. But beyond that, I actually believe the power rankings. My own eyes tell me that Notre Dame right now is a top 3 or top 4 team and could win the national championship. I don't think Miami can if they get in. That shouldn't be the way it plays out, although if they had an odds maker, if they had somebody like you or somebody from Veasan or somebody from Vegas in the room to say, look, Notre Dame would be a 7-point favorite over Miami. By the way, that's my guess. What would it be? Do you know?
I think depending on who you talk to, I talked to one odds maker last week. He said 4.5. I think Hard Rock put out 5.5, somewhere between a field goal and a touchdown. I think is a fair.
The point is,
assessment.
teams are completely different in November and December than they were for opening weekend. And Notre Dame actually is a better team than Miami right now, and I think would beat them on the field. But that's not the way. That's not what they have in front of them. They have a head-to-head, and we want these head-to-heads to happen early in the season, in the future. So that's why I agree with you. I think Miami will jump Notre Dame if BYU loses.
So
back to
So go ahead.
No, I was going to say back to the ACC scenario. So to your point, like if Duke wins and the ACC with a 7, like Duke at that point would be an 8-5 football team. For those of you who don't know, they're nowhere near the top 25 in the rankings. That would certainly open up the opportunity for James Madison because it would appear that the winner of the American between Tulane and North Texas, you agree that the winner of that is going to be in, correct?
Yeah, they're a lock. The winner of that game is in. Yep.
Okay, so the second Power 4 possibility is because the bylaws don't state that you get the top 5 conference champions, and they and 4 of them have to be from the Power 4. If Duke wins, the ACC could be left out, and Madison could get in, but Madison has to beat Troy for that to happen. Now they're a 23 point favorite. In the Sun Belt Championship game. But if Duke were to win and James Madison wins, do you think it's Madison and the ACC champion gets left out because you've already described the Miami? That might be more of an impetus to get Miami in if they can't put Duke in.
I do. I think James Madison would get in. I think the committee putting in James Madison in the rankings last night was a bit of a tell, saying, hey, we're ranking this team right now. And Duke is 7-5. If they win that game, I guess you could make the argument that they have a big win. Look, I just doing a quick aside here, and I tweeted this out yesterday. The ACC has a lot of blame to take in this whole matter because you mentioned the American, Kevin, and it's going to be North Texas versus Tulane in the championship game. And I didn't realize this until this year, but one of the main tiebreakers for the American, a group of 5 conference, is the playoff rankings. And they're smart. because they want their best team to have an opportunity to play in the playoff, right? And for these group of 5 conferences, it's enormous for them to get into the field, right? It's the, Mountain West, American, MAC, Sun Belt, CUSA. They're all vying for one spot, right? One guaranteed spot. And the American did a wise thing, and their committee or their bylaws state that in a tie amongst the standings, the team with the highest ranking gets in. And that's why Tulane was the first one to get in. And then North Texas Navy, I think, came down to a head-to-head tiebreak. So I bring that up to say this. The ACC, I guess, thinks they're high and mighty, and this whole situation would never happen where their team could be on the precipice of not getting in. Well, guess what happened, Kevin? They had a 5-way tie for second place.
Right.
UVA got in at 7-1, and a 5-way tie for second place. If they had the same tiebreaker that the American had, Miami would be in, and this whole thing would be moot because Miami would be playing for it. But a team in Duke, who, by the way, did not have a win over a team in the ACC with a winning record, Kevin.
They also lost to Tulane.
They lost to Tulane. They lost to UConn.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing? Like, the ACC.
They're also probably going to beat Virginia on Saturday night.
Probably, because that's the way college football works.
Yeah.
And Cal, and all. By the way, speaking of this conference, SMU was ranked. All they had to do was win as a 2-touchdown favorite at Cal on Saturday, and they couldn't do it, and they lost. So, the ACC, I'm not trying to spin it completely so, the Notre Dame fan can, get his team in. But, like, the ACC has a lot of blame to take here in this whole situation because they could have nipped it in the bud and just said, forget this tiebreaker nonsense. We're going to put in the highest-ranked team in this 5-way tie for second place, and that would be Miami. But in the end of the day, they came down to a tiebreaker where I believe it was based off of opponent winning percentage. Well, they lost to Virginia, a 7-1 team in conference play. They lost to Georgia Tech 6-2 in conference play. Their best win is either Cal or Wake Forest, who both finished 4-4 in conference play. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me that you have a 5-way tie for second place and somehow Duke 7-5 with no win over a team with an above 500 record in conference gets in. But here we are, and that's what has led to this discussion with Miami and Notre Dame.
If Duke wins, I guess they need Madison to lose to get in.
Well, yeah. I mean, and then you've got here in my backyard, UNLV. Coach Dan Mullen is saying, well, we're 10-2. We beat a UCLA team. We beat Miami of Ohio. They could. I mean, I think it's simple enough, Kevin. In my opinion, if Duke beats Virginia and Madison loses, I think Duke would get in at 8-5. I think if Madison wins and Duke wins, I think Madison's getting in. And you would have the winner of North Texas, Tulane, go to Ole Miss, and you'd have the winner, you'd have James Madison probably go to where? Maybe
12,
Georgia.
5,
whoever the 5 is right now.
Texas Tech, potentially, right?
Yeah, so whatever it would be. So, yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a cluster. Oregon's been playing well, too. It's funny because, Kevin, I have been a staunch proponent. I wanted this 12-team playoff. I still do. I'm at the point, and maybe it's just a unique year, but, like, I would like to see Vanderbilt in the playoff this year. I think they're a good football team. They've got an exciting quarterback in Diego Pavia who could win the Heisman Trophy. And then I think Texas, I'm not saying Texas belongs in the field. They lost 3 games. They lost to Florida. That has to count for something. But I'll tell you what, Kevin, if Texas made the field, they'd be dangerous. They'd be dangerous.
I'll tell you what, I think Utah would be dangerous if they made the field. But here's the big difference between March Madness and this. 68 teams, nobody, when they're arguing about, the bubble teams that fell off the bubble versus those that got in, nobody's saying that the team that didn't get in can win the national championship. Maybe they're saying that team could win a game in the tournament, but nobody's saying that they could win the national championship. What we're seeing here in what will be the first sort of controversial, selection Sunday, following a BYU loss, if that were to happen, is if you exclude Notre Dame, you are excluding a team that could win the whole thing, in my opinion. And I bet a lot of people on that committee are going to look at those power rankings and understand that if they go with head-to-head, which I don't think anybody should have an issue with that. Miami beat Notre Dame on the field, and all of the other metrics are identical, and they're not playing this weekend, neither team. But Notre Dame, much more so than Miami, right now with the way they've played and some of the players, including their unbelievable running back in Jeremiah Love, they would have a chance to win the whole thing. So that's where a 12 team in football versus 68 in basketball, that's where the last few, selections, that's where they're different, because Notre Dame could win it if they got in. And I'm not just saying that because you're a fan. I know you feel the same way, but I watch all these games like you do, and they are really good right now. Really good.
Well, it's funny, Kevin. I put up this side-by-side comparison of Miami, Notre Dame, and Oklahoma. And all these Oklahoma fans jumped in my mentions, and one goes, "You clearly don't watch the games. You're just looking at." I'm like, no. I watch the games. That's why I think Oklahoma has no shot of winning a national title. Their offense is tragic.
Terrible.
It is
but God,
terrible.
they are fun to watch on defense.
Their defense is nasty. That is for sure. So
it is fun to watch them. And they're going to have a home game, and that's in Norman. That's going to be a scene, man. It's been a while with them, and they're going to end up playing, let's just call it like maybe Bama in an 8-9 game or something like that. That's going to be an incredible game. Real quickly, project the Friday night game, the standalone game on December 19th. It was Notre Dame last year, right?
Yeah, it was Notre Dame, Indiana last year.
Right.
Kevin, I'll say it's Notre Dame, Oklahoma.
Okay.
I think Georgia.
But you just said that Miami's going to get in if BYU loses.
No, I think if Georgia loses, I think Alabama. I think Notre Dame needs Alabama to lose. That's my scenario.
I don't see though. I'm missing something. You don't have Alabama dropping out of the field. So if Alabama loses, how does Notre Dame get in over Miami if BYU loses? There's still only one spot.
Bear with me. So there's actually two spots, right? Alabama's 9, Notre Dame is 10, right. BYU's 11, and Miami's 12.
Right.
I think if Notre Dame, if Alabama loses to Georgia, I think they drop Bama one spot to 10. Notre Dame hops back to 9, and that's your field. I think Notre Dame, as I said, needs the buffer.
I see what you're saying. So that Miami would then be excluded because they'd be too far and away, and it's not a side-by-side.
Yeah. That's my scenario that I've concocted. Maybe I'm crazy, but then Kevin, you would get 8 versus 9, which would be Notre Dame, Oklahoma. 7 versus 10, you'd have A&M, Alabama, and you would avoid rematches. And I know they say, well, we don't care about rematches and all of that. They do. They don't want rematches.
Yeah, so they don't want Bama, Oklahoma. We saw that, and that was quite the defensive performance.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen Oklahoma play this year, people, you're going to want to watch their playoff game at home, because they are one of the awesome, swarming, relentless, high-motor defenses under Brent Venables that college football's seen in a few years. But they stink on offense. They really do.
Imagine the ratings of a Notre Dame, Oklahoma Friday night game in Norman.
That would be nuts. All right, thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. See you, Kevin.
Tim Murray, everybody. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. All right, you got to buy something, you got to sell something. If you want to jump on to the phone lines, they are now open at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Buy a team, buy a player, buy whatever you want, sell whatever you want. I'm going to start with the Green Bay Packers. I think, I forget if that was my buy last week. I know at some point in our conversation of that particular division last week, I said I think the Packers are going to win the division. I gave them out as a smell test pick against the Lions on Thanksgiving Day, and they completed the sweep of the Lions, winning 31-24. Now they get the Bears twice over the next 2.5 weeks. They get them Sunday at 4:25. It's the big 4:25 doubleheader game on Fox at Lambeau, where, by the way, the game time temperature is expected to be 15 degrees at Lambeau on Sunday against the Bears. Then they go to Denver, and then they play at Chicago. And I mentioned this right when Tim came on. The NFL did determine the start times for the Saturday, December 20th doubleheader on Fox. Washington hosting Philadelphia will go first at 5 p.m. And then Packers at Bears will be the night game at 8:20. The Packers also finish with the Ravens at Lambeau and at Minnesota. But I think they are right now the most complete football team in that division. Their sweep over Detroit, by the way, from a tiebreaker standpoint, won't really play into it because they have the tie. So, they had the tie against the Cowboys earlier in the season. So there's very unlikely there will be a tie one way or the other for the tiebreaker to be implemented. I just think the Packers right now, with, a sizable lead on the Lions, for starters, the Lions are a banged up football team, man. Amon-Ra got hurt last week. You've got Kirby Joseph still, out. You've got Penei Sewell. They've got the offensive line issues. Look at Detroit right now, a team that really over the last month has suffered a ton of injuries. They've lost 3 of their last 5 games, and the only 2 that they've won at Washington, and then barely beating the Giants at Ford Field a couple of weeks ago. They got the Cowboys in tomorrow night's Thursday night game. That's a huge big game, but then they go to L.A. to face the Rams. They close at Chicago. So I like Green Bay. I think the 2 head-to-heads with Chicago, they'll end up winning at least one of those, if not both of those. And Chicago still plays the Niners on the road. So I'm picking in my buy Green Bay to win the division. And then, by the way, if they can do it down the stretch with some really good football, they have a chance to be the 1 seed in the NFC. There's been an assumption here it would either be Philadelphia or the NFC West winner, Max. But with the Rams losing last week, they still have a big head-to-head on a Thursday night game. I think it's the 18th of December in Seattle. I think the Packers have a really good chance to finish out this season with, of their final 5 games, winning, let's say, 4 of them. If they can win 4 of them, that puts them at 12-4-1. And I think that's going to be a tough record to beat, at 12-4-1. We'll see. The NFC West winner, I think, still would be the favorite to be the 1 seed, even though Chicago is right now. But I like the Packers the rest of the way. I like the Packers in the NFC right now, along with the Rams and the Seahawks. I think they're the 3 best teams. But my buy is that the Green Bay Packers are going to win the NFC North. And if that's the second straight week I've done that, sorry about that. But I feel even more strongly about it after they beat the Lions on Thanksgiving Day. They've won 3 in a row now. Remember, their last loss was that, ugly, Monday night game against the Eagles that they lost 10-7. What's your first buy?
So I think I'm going to start with a sell, but I do want to touch on what you mentioned.
You're going to start with a sell?
Yeah, I'm going to start with
mixing
a sell.
it up on me. Okay,
yes.
Go ahead.
Just like I mixed it up on you last week by going a little college football. But
right, you did that too. Yeah.
The NFC playoff picture is crazy right now. The Niners are the 7th seed and they're 9-4. Like, it's so tight. One loss could screw you, 1 win could make your season. It's unbelievable. But my sell is going to be on the AFC side. I think the Steelers need to just tear it all down, everything to the studs. Tomlin, I think, has worn out his welcome. I mean, I feel like every year for the past 5 years, I've heard Steelers fans are unhappy with Mike Tomlin, and I think they need a fresh start. So that's kind of why. I mean, yeah, I'm out on the Steelers long term. I don't think that Rodgers is going to be a long term.
What are you selling? You're selling Mike Tomlin finally leaves Pittsburgh.
Yeah, pretty
and
much.
They start from scratch.
That's kind of where I'm at. Yeah, Steelers tear it down to the studs. That's my sell.
Right. I could see that happening. I don't think the Steelers are done yet. This division is so bad. The Ravens are clearly not a very good football team, despite that, winning streak they had against basically beating nobody. I guess the Chicago win looks good right now. They still have 2 against the Steelers, including Sunday. That's a 1:00 game, by the way. Would love to see that in the later window, but you got Chicago, Green Bay. One of the buys I considered was buying Cincinnati to win the division.
It's a good it's not a bad bet.
Yeah. But to your point, even if Pittsburgh won the division, let's just say at 8-9 or 9-8, and didn't win a playoff game, it could still spell the end of Tomlin and the Pittsburgh run. Remember, the Pittsburgh saying the standard is the standard. Well, that standard has produced no playoff wins since 2016. So they've got to win a playoff game this year. And to do that, they've got to get into the playoffs. There's not one AFC North team right now with a positive point differential on the season. The Ravens are -4, the Steelers are -8, and then the Bengals and the Browns are, minus a lot. That's kind of nuts. All right, since I bought Green Bay in the NFC North, that means that by default, I'm selling the Chicago Bears. Did you know that if they end up being the 1 seed, they'll be the 1 seed that has a quarterback with the lowest completion percentage in the last 25 years?
It's a great stat.
Look, Caleb does some good things. I'm not saying that he doesn't. He's a competitor. He's a playmaker as a runner, as a scrambler. He makes some plays and some good throws off schedule. He right now on the season has a 58.1% completion percentage. He's 17 TDs over 5 picks. His team is 9-3. I think this is where you get into this area where it's like, I'm sorry, Sheehan, do you know that he's 9-3? He's the starting quarterback of a 9-3 football team, and that he's led multiple comeback victories. Yeah, I'm very aware of that. I'm not knocking him completely. I'm just giving you a stat that is out there. In this day and age in the NFL, your quarterbacks have to be higher completion percentage quarterbacks, and he is a very low completion percentage quarterback. That's all I'm saying. And will that catch up with him? Well, it didn't in Philadelphia. I mean, they rushed for 281 yards. It's insane. They won their 5th straight game. They are 9-3. They're well coached. Ben Johnson doing a great job. Dennis Allen, by the way, scheming up some takeaways. But it's at Packers, Browns at home, the Packers at home, at Niners, and then Lions at home. It's going to be hard for them to miss the postseason. That would be a good sell to pick Chicago to miss the postseason altogether. And it's possible. I just don't think they're going to win the division. And even if they make the postseason, they're not going to be much of a threat. But the development and the progress from where Caleb was last year is a positive. There's no doubt about it. And they're well coached, man. Ben Johnson, Dennis Allen doing a phenomenal job. It's going to be interesting, man. The Philly win, with the way they did it, they scheme up running the football. There's no doubt. I mean, the kid from Rutgers and DeAndre Swift are doing a great job. If you can run the football like that and take the pressure off a low completion percentage QB, you can win games in the postseason. We know that. Outdoors, cold weather. If you can rush for 281 yards against the Philly defense, you should be taken more seriously than how much I'm taking them seriously right now. But I'm selling the Chicago Bears. I guess it's time for a buy from you.
It is. And so this is an interesting one because I'm looking at the AFC playoff picture, I'm looking at all top 7 teams, and I don't think that the AFC champion is currently in the playoffs. So I'm going to buy that the AFC champion is currently the 8th seed or lower. So that would give me the Texans, the Steelers, or the Chiefs, maybe even the Bengals. I think the AFC champion's still outside of the picture right now.
That's a good buy. That's a great buy. Now, I didn't want to buy the Texans for like the third time in the last 4 weeks.
But man,
but you know how
good.
I'm on the Texans. By the way, for size at 30-1 to win the AFC championship. And that was a wager I made 3.5 weeks ago.
Good bet.
I honestly believe right now, if they get in, it's interesting because Notre Dame could win the national championship and they may not qualify for the 12-team playoff.
Yeah.
And Houston, I think, could win the Super Bowl. I said that after they beat Buffalo on that Thursday night game. And it's possible they won't qualify for the playoffs. But they are really good. They should go into Arrowhead. If they're as good as I think they are, with Kansas City being just a little bit off, they should win that game Sunday night at Arrowhead to really announce, hey, we're here. You don't want to play us.
Be big for us
if we get in. God, man, there's some good games this week.
Yeah, we got some.
I like that, though.
Good ball.
So you've got outside looking in Houston, Kansas City, Cincinnati. Do you throw Miami into that mix?
Sure, why not? Mike McDaniel's been coaching for his job
McDaniel's
anyway.
Coaching his way back for 2026?
It's crazy to me. Can't believe it.
They've won 3 in a row, 4 of their last 5, and they're not out of it in the AFC wild card race. That's insane.
They're nuts, dude.
Your turn. Phone lines are open. We've got some lines open at 301-230-0980. NFL buy and sell. You got to buy something. You got to sell something. It can be a player. I have a player, by the way, that I'm going to mention when we come back. Let's hear from you next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. NFL buy and sell. What are you buying? What are you selling? I was going to lead with this, but I decided to just save it because I really feel strongly about the Packers right now. I like them. I like Jordan Love, man. I don't know why. He'll disappoint me, I'm sure. But I'm buying that Washington signs Treylon Burks in the offseason to bring him back. I have no idea what the contract will look like. There's no, market value expectation at places like Spot Rack because he's just not listed as right now as a prominent wide receiver free agent, which he isn't. By the way, there aren't a lot of prominent wide receiver free agents. There's not a guy entering his prime of his career that you're going to look at and say, oh, you got to have him. And there's going to be a big, race for that particular player. I think the biggest projected contract is like a guy like Juwan Jennings, who's an unrestricted free agent in San Francisco. But I think they're going to bring Burks back. Washington gave him a chance. He was out on the street for a reason, boys and girls. All right, he was out on the street for a reason as a previous first round pick of the Tennessee Titans back in 2022. But he's got size, he's got hands. This might be the right fit. You've heard Dan Quinn describe him as a guy who's got a lot of hunger and a lot to prove. It's not going to result in a multi-year deal or any kind of big deal. Maybe it'll be a multi-year deal. Maybe it'll be a 2-year deal, some sort of upside, and a deal built on some incentives. But I think he's going to be back into it because I don't know that they can really upgrade the position significantly in the offseason as much as they'd like. I think Terry back with Luke McCaffrey and getting some of the players that haven't played this year for the most part back out onto the field will be a plus. But I think Burks is going to be a part of that. So that was the other buy that was player specific. All right, we've got a phone line open if you want to weigh in, 301-230-0980. Buy something, sell something NFL-wise. Let's start with Little. Little, go ahead.
Kim, thank you for taking my call. Shout out to
Sure.
Mad Max.
Yep.
I told Mad Max I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings, but man, I'm selling Kingsbury and Joe Witt, and I'm buying Mike McCarthy and Lovie Smith ASAP after the season. Hey, look, guess what, Kevin? I got a lot of money on Indiana. Indiana's gonna win it all. Put your money on Indiana to win it all. You heard it from
They're
Little.
good.
Hey, God
They're
bless y'all. Stay up,
It's going
Kevin.
to be interesting to see just the matchup on Saturday night.
Yes, sir. I
between
got
Indiana
it. I
and
got
Ohio State.
Indiana. I'm gonna drop something on it too. I got them winning it all.
All right.
God
Good for
bless
you.
y'all. Stay
Mike
up, big
McCarthy and Lovie Smith. How about that? That's interesting. I mean, I've always loved Lovie Smith as a defensive coordinator. He's always been interesting. I don't think he's anywhere. Mike McCarthy's out of football right now. I mentioned yesterday just the, if Cleveland's staff gets, knocked out of there, Stefanski, Schwartz, that'd be a hell of a combination of Stefanski, Schwartz to Washington next year. But I was reading Graziano and Fields and Yates's, or maybe it was Fowler's column today in ESPN on ESPN.com before the show. There's a lot of respect for Kevin Stefanski, a former coach of the year. And because the pool of potential head coaching candidates appears to be kind of light, a lot of people think that if he gets fired, he may get another head coaching opportunity. It's kind of like what, they used to say about this place. Cleveland is that place. And it's like, it's hard to win in Cleveland. But there are a lot of people in the NFL that believe very much in Kevin Stefanski. Sabah's got an NFL buy and sell. Sabah, go ahead. How are you? Hello, Sabah.
Huh? Wait.
Yep.
Hello? Can you hear me? Yeah.
I got you now.
About Jeremy. Oh, okay. Sorry. Hey, thanks, man. Take my call. I am buying one Dak Eugene Prescott. I don't know if his middle name's Eugene, but he looks like a Eugene to me. I am so impressed with him, and it just confirms people who pass get better. I wasn't really a big fan of his. I thought he held them back, but I'm telling you, if they make the playoffs, they are the Kansas City Chiefs of the NFC. Watch out. If they get in, they're going to be dangerous, and I can actually see this be the year that Dak takes Dallas, breaks my heart, to the Super Bowl. I am selling, who I never bought in the first place, one Lamar Jackson. Again, legs don't last. as he's getting older, he's getting worse because it doesn't have escapability and never figured out the passing game. And one last one for you. I sold Joe Burrow. I'm buying him back because he finally learned from Joe Flacco to get rid of the ball, stop holding it, and stop blaming your line for your injuries and your sacks. Get rid of the ball, and then you'll succeed.
He never blamed his
back
line,
Joe
just so you
Burrow.
know. Everybody else did.
He always did. All the media. The media did.
Yeah, the media
how
did.
Bad
He
the
didn't.
line was. How great
You said
were they when Joe Flacco
you
was
said
there?
he blamed
Well,
his
but
line.
He never
did
it.
that.
He never denied it. He never said those sacks were my fault. He just let it happen. Well, I think he's finally learning. It's all his fault all this time, all these injuries. So
Right.
I'm buying him back. So we'll see what happens.
Rain Dakota Prescott is his full name. Dakota is where you get Dak from, is his middle name. I don't even know what the Eugene reference was, but we'll just let that go.
Eugene to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks, man.
Great call, as usual. Jeff in Vienna. Jeff, go ahead. What's your NFL buy? What's your NFL sell?
Happy Wednesday, Kevin. As a Bengals fan, Joe Burrow has never blamed anybody for his injuries. So
she injects a lot of inaccuracy typically in her calls. But you know what? She's so positive that if you didn't know and you hadn't been paying attention over the years, you'd buy it hook, line, and sinker. She's very, very forceful and positive in her. You know, my father used to say, son, even if you don't know, be positive. So I think Sabah learned the same way. He's never thrown anybody under the bus. But everybody in the media, sure. By the way, a lot of truth to it, that the offensive line in Cincinnati has been horrible over the years. What do you got? What's your buy and what's your sell?
He went to the Super Bowl with one of the worst offensive lines in NFL history. So
right. Yeah. Well, she bought him back. She bought him back. So good for her.
Yeah. So I'm a Bengals fan. I'll just caution you on buying the Bengals. The Steelers and Ravens are 5-1 against the Jets, Bears, and Vikings, and the Bengals lost all three of them. If either the Ravens or the Steelers goes 9-8 and the Bengals go 8-9, the division record doesn't matter.
Right.
And that broken tackle touchdown against the Bears is going to kill us. That's what it's going to come down to. So,
right, the Loveland play,
yeah, I'm with you. I'm kind of buying Houston. And unlike Sabah, I am selling Dallas and I'm selling KC as well.
Man, you know, I think about Cincinnati and they remember the laughter when they signed Burrow. And it was like, oh my God, he's going to get killed behind that offensive line. And as it turned out, he put on an absolute show for 5 or 6 weeks. They were just so horrible defensively. But if they had gotten that Jet game that they blew, the Bear game that they completely blew, they had a shot against the Patriots, you know, a few weeks ago. Just one of those games, if they were at 5-7, I would love them to win the division at this point.
Yeah, I think you're right. But like I said, if they end up 8-9 and one of those other teams ends up 9-8, the division record doesn't matter at that point in time, and those games are going to kill us.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. Let's go to Duntel. Duntel and Frederick. What are you buying? What are you selling in the NFL?
Hey, good morning, Kevin, man. Hey, first and foremost, I'm selling the New England Patriots once again. The schedule is just too soft. I just don't think they beat anybody, especially playoff teams. Maybe I believe it was Buffalo early in the season and Tampa Bay. I think that's their only wins up against playoff teams. I mean, I know you got to beat who's in front of, but I just don't find them as a dominant football team. I don't think they'll win a game in the playoffs. As far as buying, before I give you my buy, man, I'm just happy that Sabah didn't say anything bad about Jaden Daniels. I thought she was definitely going to sell something on him.
Oh, I get that. I get that from her all the time on DM. There's some beauties on there, some absolute beauties. Yeah.
But I am buying the importance of us signing Jeremy Tunsil because Jaden's backside has to be protected, and he's going to be one of the best in the league besides Trey for the 49ers. So that's my buy and sell.
All right. Thanks for that. By the way, on the Patriots, I think I disagree. I think I disagree. I think the Patriots are actually, and because they really have the inside track right now to the 1 seed. They're playing Buffalo this weekend, off their bye, excuse me. They finally got their bye week. They come back, they play Buffalo. They play at Baltimore. I mean, I think they can win that game. I think Baltimore's a mess right now. Then they finish with the Jets and Dolphins. So they're going to get to, I mean, they're 11. They're going to be 13-4, worst case, probably 14-3. They're going to be the 1 seed. And they did beat Tampa on the road, a good, well-coached defensive team. I've done a little bit of digging on just New England's season, and I wanted to share a couple of things about them. Yeah, this is going to be one of the easiest schedules of all time, but let's also give them credit. They're doing something that NFL teams don't do all the time. Every week we see big underdogs winning games outright. They're not losing those games. They're destroying, in some cases, those teams, like the Titans and the Browns, the Giants on Monday night, some of the real bad teams they faced, the Jets a few weeks ago. Now, some of the average teams they've had, kind of life and death games with, like the Falcons and the Bengals, but they're taking care of business. That's from somebody who has bet the sport as long as I have. It's unusual when the really good teams don't slip up against, lesser competition. Look, Carolina's good, but did anybody see the Rams as a 10-point dog losing that game outright? We see it every week in the NFL. Really? They beat that team, and it hasn't happened yet for New England. The other thing is they are clearly one of the best coached teams in the NFL. How about this stat from DVOA? DVOA says that in terms of wide open, the most separation of receivers in the NFL, the Patriots are not only number one, they're number one by a lot. They get their wide receivers, Josh McDaniel does, so wide open, better than any other scheme offensively in the NFL. Stephon Diggs and what's their other receiver, or among the top 3 or top 4 in the league in separation rates. Demario Douglas is up there. Not to mention, they've got an explosive back in Travion Henderson. Their offensive line took a blow, and first time out without Will Campbell looked pretty good, but that's against the Giants on Monday Night Football. And they're one of the top, if not still, the number one rush defenses in the NFL. I don't think the Patriots are going to be easy to beat in the postseason. I don't. And by the way, that wide open separation rate, number one in the league by a lot, it's not a knock on Drake May. Drake May makes those throws. He makes those throws in timing. He also makes the deep throw very well as anybody in the league. Right now, I think, back as the favorite or co-favorite with Stafford for MVP. I have definitely become a massive Drake May fan watching him. I don't think what we're watching, even though the competition is lesser than every other team in the league, I don't think we're watching something that is just a taking advantage of the schedule situation. He is really good off schedule. He's really good with his accuracy. Where is he right now? Is he at 70%? Is he leading the league in completion percentage? Again, a part of that is wide open receivers, more so than any team in the league, especially the wide open stat per DVOA. Yeah, the quarterbacks that have played a lot, number one in the league, 71.5% completion percentage. Wow. Let's go to Mike. Mike, go ahead. NFL buy and sell.
Hey, Kev, how you doing?
Good, Mike.
I got one I'm going to throw out there and let you chew on. I'm selling John Harbaugh. I think he gets fired at the end of the year if the Ravens don't make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And I'm buying Cliff Kingsbury that coached the Baltimore Ravens.
In many ways, it'd be an interesting fit, but that they then get rid of their, they'd get rid of Todd Monken, right? Kingsbury and Monken aren't going to work together. Monken, I think, has been good for Lamar. There's been definitely a bit of a step back season from last year's, but to be fair to Lamar, he's not been healthy at all this year. And without his legs, he's not the same quarterback, not even close.
And I think Kingsbury could help Lamar.
Yeah.
These,
I think Monken's helped Lamar. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you just give me your buy and sell in one fell swoop? Harbaugh out, Kingsbury in.
Yeah, one swoop.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right, Kev. Thank you. Yep.
Firing. Moving on from John Harbaugh. You know what's interesting about the AFC this year? There's a chance that Mahomes isn't going to be there, and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson both may not be able to take advantage of it in the postseason, because they're not playing on good football teams right now. Look, Buffalo is different than Baltimore. Buffalo is healthy on offense. Josh Allen is healthy. They're just not a very good defensive team. Baltimore isn't very good defensively, and their number one overall team asset is hurting, clearly. Lamar's just not himself. But can you imagine if we get to the AFC playoffs, and for the first time since Mahomes took over as a starter, Kansas City's not in the postseason, and that's been the stumbling block for Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, the Chiefs and Mahomes, and they may not be able to take advantage of it because they're going to be wild card teams. I mean, the Ravens may be a division winner. Actually, it's the only way the Ravens get in is a division winner. But the Ravens may not even get in. I mean, Buffalo right now is the 7 seed. They are 1 game better than Houston for the 7 seed. They're not going to win the division. They're 4 games back, or 3 games back, 3.5 games back of the Patriots, right? Something like that. 2.5 games back, I guess, in total. So they're not going to win the division. Can you imagine if Mahomes, Jackson, and Allen are all out of the postseason? Be a shame for Allen and Jackson, that's for sure. The 1 year Kansas City takes a big step back. It happens to even the best of franchises. You know, even in the heyday of the Niners, in the heyday of the Cowboys, in the heyday of the Patriots missed the postseason. Now, it took Brady getting hurt, and they still went 11-5. Ivan, go ahead. Buy something, sell something.
Hey, Kevin, what's up, man?
What's up, Ivan?
Hey, Kevin.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing, man? Happy Thanksgiving. I hope you had a good one.
Yep.
Hey, look, I'm thinking ahead right now. By the way, have you seen Pittsburgh's tight end, that Darnell Washington?
Love him. Yeah.
Man,
6'8",
he is
300 pounds. Yeah.
He is a beast. Hey, listen, I'm thinking ahead now. I'm thinking that the Vikings and the Giants are big games for us. So what I'm buying in 2 games that Jackson Dart will become a folk hero as he scrambles for a 50-yard touchdown to beat Washington. And we get into the top 5 and pick up, so we'll be in line for a haul, to move back, or for a game record on defense. Wins don't help anyone, Kevin, but DQ's bad record already.
I'm not with you on that. I can't get behind that on December 3rd.
Kevin, wins don't help us. How do wins help us? You play well, but you lose the game.
Yeah, I understand the concept, and I've bought into the concept in previous years when there was a regime change or when there was a dire need for a quarterback. But I'd actually like to see him finish on a 5-game win streak, wrecking the Cowboys' chances, hurting the Eagles' seeding, and us going into this offseason knowing that this
Kevin,
was a season that just unfortunately the banged up nature of it over the first 10, 12 games hurt us, but that we're still
Kevin, let me ask you a question. Would you be okay? Would you be okay with a defensive game record if we get into the top 5?
Yeah,
or would
of
you
course.
if
we get there, if we end up in the top 5, I'll be happy at the time. I just don't like the process, and it's hard for me to get behind the process to get there.
Exactly. Hey, Kevin, one more thing real quick is, by the way, our defense overall has been better, but I think it's a little bit overrated. Denver scored every time they really needed to in that game.
Right.
So I don't think we should be too excited. I think Denver was more surprised by our offense than our defense.
Yeah, and I think there are some moments where, Quinn's scheme, his play calling, got a young quarterback in Bo Nix a little bit confused, and there were some moments there with the pick by Wagner and the third down stop where Martin was right where the ball was thrown. It's better, but to your point, the Broncos still had over 400 yards. The Dolphins were in the red zone 5 times against us.
Every time they needed to score, they scored, Kevin.
Yeah.
Hey, play well, but lose the game, my friend. All right, have a good one, man.
You didn't sell anything.
Go ahead. Oh, it's too easy. I'm selling the Eagles in back-to-back Super Bowls. That ain't happening.
Yeah, probably not. All right. Thanks, Ivan. Thanks to all of you who called. Want to talk about something when we come back. Nick Ackridge is going to join us at 12 from Pro Football Focus. Dan Quinn scheduled to talk before the end of the show. We'll see if he says anything about Jaden Daniels. By the way, the announcement about the schedule for this week included a TBD on quarterback Wednesday. Is it going to be Mariota or is it going to be Jaden Daniels? I have a feeling it'll be Mariota today, but I don't know if that will exclude Jaden from being announced as the starter when we get to Friday. We'll see, but this is the first prep day for the Vikings on Sunday, so we're going to learn something about the quarterback position, so we will carry some of that. But I want to talk about this concept of the under center teams having an absolute huge year versus shotgun teams, which are not. That's next.
All right. Happy Wednesday, everybody. We start off with hoops in an unprecedented move. The LA Clippers have cut ties with Chris Paul, the 20-year NBA vet, posted to his Instagram story that he was sent home from Atlanta prior to their game tonight versus the Hawks. President of basketball operations, Lawrence Frank, said in a statement, quote, "We are parting ways with Chris and he will no longer be with the team. We will work with him on the next steps of his career." Certainly some weird things going on in LA. Now, while we're on hoops, rough night defensively for the Wizards, and Tyrese Maxey looked unstoppable for the Philadelphia 76ers, putting up 35 points. They fall to Philadelphia 121-102, but meanwhile, the Caps, they get a big win in Los Angeles over the Kings by a score of 3-1. They're starting to break away from the pack in the Eastern Conference, now tied with Carolina for the top spot in the Metro Division. The Caps will look to continue their ascension in the division with another West Coast matchup tonight, this time against the San Jose Sharks. Puck drop is set for 10:30. Pregame set to get going over on 106.7 The Fan at 10:15. Right here on the Team 980, the Georgetown Hoyas, they take on UMBC at 8 p.m. Pregame gets rolling right here on the Team 980 at 7:45. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Take Command in Denton's office throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
from my guy Howard Gutman. Been on the show many times, former ambassador to Belgium during the Obama years, now does a post-game show for the Washington Commanders down in Richmond. After describing all of his various travels across the world over the last few weeks, he said, you covered Jake Moody and said that he had a good debut hitting 2 short field goals and 2 extra points. But I thought Dan Quinn and the team spoke volumes about Moody before he ever made his first attempt by choosing to punt from the Bronco 39-yard line rather than attempt a 56-yard field goal or even go for a 4th down conversion. We were down 3-0 at that point, and a field goal would have changed momentum. Yeah, I did not include that in my post game because I'm pretty sure that was an into the wind field goal. There was some wind on Sunday night in Landover. It was cold. It was windy. I think one of the reasons you could get tickets for what I was told, like $25 at midfield on Sunday afternoon before the kick. But he did choose to punt at the Denver 39-yard line on 4th and 8. It was 4th and 8 rather than put Jake Moody out there for what would have been his first field goal attempt from 56, 57 yards out. I think he did that because it was into the wind. It was 4th and 8, too long perhaps to go for it. He felt against that defense. That was Washington's opening drive of the game. They had already converted, by the way, a 3rd down on that drive. It was a 10-play drive, 40 yards, took 5 minutes and 52 seconds. But it's a decent point. I think, though, the reason for it was into the wind, super long field goal, and I think they had a better feel going into this game, that they had a better chance defensively against Denver's offense. And to use Tressway to punt, and, it was a good punt down to the 11-yard line. Could have been better, but a 28-yarder fair caught at the 11-yard line. And look, the next drive following that punt, Denver 3 and out, which has not been a usual thing this year. The defense forcing a 3 and out, and Washington ended up starting from their own 43-yard line, 1st and 10 with the ball. That was the drive that ended in interception after they were moving the ball again and had, a 1st and 10 at the Denver 23-yard line. So the decision turned out to be the right decision because they got a stop. They got really good field position rather than potentially handing it over to Denver in excellent field position off of a missed field goal or a missed 4th down attempt. But it's not a bad point. And look, the reason Howard made the point is that this year in the NFL, the bottom line is 56-yard field goals, 57-yard field goals are routine. Teams aren't punting from the other team's 38, 39-yard line. They're not doing it. They're not really punting that much from the other team's 40. Context is everything, and the context here, I think, was wind and the fact that they actually felt about as good as they felt about their defense because Denver's not a great offensive football team. But, yeah, I mean, you don't punt this year with the new juiced balls and the long field goals that much when you are in plus territory. Certainly plus 40 or better. You're at that area where there's not much gain in a punt, and that you better have a really good field goal kicker. Look, Moody's kicked long field goals before, so he's got the leg from that distance. It may have been, part of it could have been, am I really going to put my new kicker out there for what we released our old kicker for, which is missing, 50-yard plus field goals, and that's going to be his first kick into the wind, on a cold, raw night, on a slippery field, by the way, which we pointed out was new sod, and it was a bit slippery. So a lot of you have sent me over the last week or so these under center versus shotgun stats. We've talked about, under center versus shotgun, but there are some numbers that are really compelling for 2025. And they're a bit of an outlier in 2025. Right now, through 12, games, everybody's played at least 12. The Patriots have actually played 13 at this point, I guess. The top teams in the league are under center most. And the worst teams in the league are under center the least. Right now, the Rams, here are your top. I'm going to give you the top 11 under center teams in the league. Rams 1, Bears 2, 49ers 3, Lions 4, Seahawks 5, Bills 6, Patriots 7, Jags 8, Texans 9, Cowboys 10, Carolina Panthers 11. Do you know what every single one of those teams, do you know what they all have in common right now? They all have winning records. Not one team in the top 11 has a losing record of the top 11 teams that play the most under center with their quarterback. Now, the bottom teams, the team that has been under center the least in the NFL, our team, through 12 games, 34 total under center snaps for the season versus the Los Angeles Rams, the most under center team in the league, 412 under center snaps through 12 games. By the way, if you're wondering, like, what percentage is it under center versus shotgun for, say, the Rams, who lead the league in it? About 57% under center, 43% shotgun. So it's not like exclusive under center. You don't see that, at all in the NFL anymore. But Washington's not only dead last in under center snaps with 34 total, it's not even close. The Atlanta Falcons are the second fewest in the league with under center snaps at 91. And I'll tell you, most of their under center snaps have happened in the last 2 weeks with Kirk Cousins starting at quarterback. They were not an under center team at all, or not nearly enough with Michael Penix Jr. But let me give you the bottom teams, right? Washington is the fewest, followed by Atlanta, Cincinnati, then Chiefs, Eagles, then Saints, Titans, Dolphins, Jets, Giants. What do of those 9 out of 11 teams have in common? They all have losing records. Now, I will point out that the Chiefs and the Eagles last year were also in that bottom quarter of teams that played under center, and they both ended up in the Super Bowl. And although a lot of the data is not available going back years and years, the bottom line is this is an unprecedented year. It appears to be, with the percentage of teams that have winning records playing under center with their quarterback. So we've seen it increase here in the last few years. But again, Philly and Kansas City last year, 2 Super Bowl teams that did not play in the league's, upper elite of under center teams. What does under center do? I really think back to like when Cooley was on, starting even before I did the show with Chris for a few years, when he was on with Zabe and Andy, and then Zabe and Galdi, in the afternoon slot. And all of us, I think, really enjoyed our time working with Chris, because Chris was really smart and Chris was a real observer and a real thinker when it came to the game. That's why he was so great, with the film breakdown. Now, he had a lot of information that other people didn't have, but he was really good at it. But I remember him going through kind of the benefits of the Shanahan style system of being under center versus, taking a lot in pistol or in shotgun, because Kyle made a big change, with Griffin when they went to that pistol. They basically introduced the pistol formation in the NFL. They took it from Chris Alt, the head coach in Nevada. And by the way, as you look at this list, what's common about the teams at the top of this list? The Rams, the 49ers, the Seahawks with Kubiak, the Shanahan style offenses. They're under center more. They're focused on run, zone run, and then booting off of it and play actioning off of it. But the real benefit of playing under center is that your play action game and your bootleg game are much harder to read and recognize defensively. And Cooley, 15 years ago, 12 years ago, whatever it was when he joined the station, 2013, I guess it was, he said that what happens defensively with an under center quarterback is when you're, stretching inside or outside on a zone run look, every play looks similar to these runs, whether you pull it and fake it or not. And the biggest benefit of playing under center is that defensively, when the quarterback turns his back to the defense, they can't see the football. And even though at a shotgun or pistol, even with a really good mesh fake on play action, it will put the defense in conflict. It will put those linebackers into a position where they tend to react coming up a little bit if you pull it. It's not as effective as it is when the quarterback turns his back to the defense and they can't see the ball at all. And that's one of the real benefits. And then all of a sudden, that bootleg off of under center versus saying pistol, which you see, Stafford's in the pistol a lot. The McVay and the LaFleurs, you've seen the pistol a lot. Stafford in it. Zach Robinson from L.A. to Atlanta. It was all pistol last year for Kirk. It's been a lot of pistol this year for Penix. They still think that they can run all of their stuff. And in the pistol, you've got the back behind you. So you are turning a bit rather than mesh faking out of the shotgun or out of the pistol. And they still think there's significant benefit there. And I think those that have their quarterbacks in the pistol and run a lot of zone run scheme and booting off of it and play actioning off of it will tell you there's not that much of a difference, but there is a reason a lot of teams are doing it, and a lot of the successful teams are doing it this year. An interesting conversation, and as I think we talked about it yesterday. Look, if there was a change, and with Kingsbury getting a head coaching job somewhere, I would really want and advocate for that style of offense. I think Jaden would be perfect in that style of offense. I think he'd be perfect in almost any style of offense because I think he's that talented. But I think there would be great benefit with him playing more under center. I do. All right. Up next, Nick Ackridge from Pro Football Focus. We'll talk to him about the under center versus shotgun stuff. He may have an opinion or two about it. That's next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. There's news on Joe Jacoby's Hall of Fame track. It has been derailed once again. He is not one of the 3 senior finalists, so he does not advance to that final round. Ken Anderson did, Roger Craig did, and L.C. Greenwood did. I thought that Ken Anderson had a really good shot, and I think he's got a shot to get into the Hall of Fame. Roger Craig as well. They'll try again next year. Henry Ellard, Jacoby, Stanley Morgan, Steve Tasker, Otis Taylor, all from the semifinalist stage out into the finalist stage. They'll get voted on prior to Super Bowl weekend, or on Super Bowl weekend. I forget which day it is. It's an annual thing getting upset about Jake not being in the Hall of Fame. I think he deserves it. I think is one of the all-decade players in the 1980s on one of the most famous offensive lines and one of the best offensive lines. And he was the constant. As the Hogs changed, Jake was still there. Bostic was still there. Grimm was still there. But there were other parts of it that changed. They'll try again next year with Jacoby. Maybe it'll be a little bit. If Anderson gets in or Craig gets in, Jake may be a better shot next year. We'll see. All right, joining me right now is actually one of my favorite guests to have on from Pro Football Focus, Nick Ackridge, a senior analyst with PFF. Nick, beyond just being a senior analyst for PFF, is also a huge Washington fan. And every time I have you on, especially after a game, I'm always curious. Did you have, in terms of your, PFF game recap, game, film breakdown analysis, grading analysis, did you have Washington as your game or not this past week?
Yeah, no, I did this week. Typically I'll get them if they're in the 1 o'clock slate, I'll get them. But I always do Sunday night as well, just because NBC and we have it as live as we possibly can. But I always do, the Sunday night game. So I had the Broncos offense, so I was focusing more on the defense. But then in Monday morning, went back and got a chance to watch both sides.
Okay, so that was that. When you get assigned something, you just get one team and one side of the ball. I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, typically college, I'll typically do both sides just because the deadlines aren't as fast. With the NFL, we want it to be as close to live as possible, and it's just tough to do with both sides. But NFL, typically just going to get one side, and then college, I'll usually do both.
How long does it take you to do it?
For the NFL, it'll just take me. I'll be finished kind of like right after the last snap. That's just because I'm again just doing one side. But college, it'll take me about 4.5 to 5 hours. That's on the faster side. I could go a little bit faster.
I'm sorry. What did you say? You'll be done after the last snap of the game?
Yeah, for the NFL, I'll be done basically with that last snap.
And why is that? Are you just going back and watching the game during commercials? Each play and breaking it down, each player.
Yeah, so we have a live stream where we get the video live, not the All-22, but the broadcast, and we'll do that live. We'll get majority of the data there. There's obviously stuff that we can't see, but the majority of the kind of like primary data we can pretty much always get from broadcast. So we'll be able to kind of do that live as it goes. So I'm keeping up live with the broadcast, and then by the time the game is done, I'm usually again keeping up live, and I've finished at that point.
Let me ask you something real quickly about the Denver offense, because I thought this would be an issue for them heading into the game. J.K. Dobbins was having a very good season for them, and I don't see McLaughlin or Harvey as Dobbins like. How much have they missed Dobbins? It seemed like they missed him a lot. Look, Washington's given up. Achane should have had another 100 yards had they given him the ball more. Gibbs, they may have been able to win the game just handing the ball off to Gibbs in that game. And the other night, the run defense was exceptional. How much was that about no J.K. Dobbins versus Washington's defense stepping up and playing better?
Yeah, I think it was more the running backs not being as great as it is the Washington defense playing well. There were still some times where, Washington's defense was getting kind of bullied in the run game. Just looking at the grades, and again, I was doing this game live. Kinlaw's grades not that great. Frankie Luvu's grades not that great in the run game. Offensive line, the Denver's offensive line was pretty solid when it came to run blocking. They just couldn't really kind of running backs just couldn't really get the most out of it. And that was kind of more the problem. I think it was more the running back struggling than it was anything that Washington did. I think they're still getting kind of gashed in the run game right now.
Yeah. Be interesting because actually Minnesota can actually run the football. So that's going to be an interesting matchup on Sunday. So there is something specific that I want to talk to you about, and that it's sort of the idea of under center versus shotgun and the incredible sort of numbers that have bared out this year with the successful teams being more under center teams. But real quickly, back to Sunday night. And Marcus Mariota's performance in particular, I think I saw the PFF grade. Somebody sent it to me. I loved I thought what Quinn said, there was a warrior mentality. There was a gunslinger mentality, which we haven't really seen with Mariota throughout his career. I mean, just taking shots and going for haymakers on some of those throws in the fourth quarter and in overtime. But I know you've told me before, you really get knocked down for the throw he had on the second drive of the game, the pick, or maybe even that backwards chuck to who was it? Who fell on it? Bates, maybe for a 7-yard loss. So what was his overall grade? Was it a good one or not?
Overall was 62.7, which when you kind of put into perspective what you just talked about, that horrific interception, which is it's going to get the heaviest downgrade we can give, and it's typically tough to kind of respond from that. So anything above 60 is seen as above average. So for him to kind of finish at 62.7 with, like you said, that weird shovel back fumble thing that he kind of threw to John Bates, I thought he played pretty well outside of those two plays. I think he continues to play well, but he also has those moments we've seen these past couple of weeks where he just has kind of those bozo plays where everything just kind of goes blank. He doesn't really know what he's doing. He has a weird tendency to constantly want to jump. And I think if he would stop doing that would be great. But I think overall he's played really well.
It's a run. It's a run and jump. It's not from standstill. Usually he's moving up into the pocket and he just decides to jump as if he's going up for a layup or a dunk.
Yeah, it's very strange. I don't think it's worked yet. And he keeps trying it, but yeah, just limiting those weird, just kind of bonehead plays. I think he's played really well overall. But yeah, those are kind of continue to be backbreaking for him.
If I told you that they went into next season without Austin Eckler, which is probably going to be true, but with Rodriguez and Krosky-Merritt returning as their top two backs, McNichols as well, I think there's a chance they'll want to bring him back and sign him to something to bring him back. Who do you think week 1 next year would be the lead back?
I think it would be Chris Rodriguez. I've been wanting for him to get more touches for the past 2 years. Every single time that he touches the football, he is making somebody miss. He's always getting more than what is blocked for. And I think he's very quick with his decisions. He's straight downhill. He's not going to kind of jump back and forth in the backfield. He's going to hit the hole that's intended for him to hit, and he's always going to get positive yards. So I've always been a big fan of Chris Rodriguez. I think it's really nice that he's finally getting some carries and he's kind of, making the most of it.
Is there a player this year, Nick, that in this incredible sort of, lost season of injuries and best players not playing in games, has there been an emergence of a player or two that you think, the coaching staff, when they're watching film, they're saying, this guy really can play? We didn't expect it when he was with us in the spring and the summer, when we put him on practice squad, or even a guy off the street that we had to sign. Who's emerged in sort of a positive, mode during this lost season as a keeper for next year that nobody saw coming? I
think I'll give you one for each side. I think Chris Paul on the offensive side.
Right.
I think when he first stepped in, he played really, really well. He's been very good in pass protection, struggled a little bit in the run game. But overall, I think he's been a very solid guard. And that's really kind of what you need. You just kind of need him to sort of tread water. Connerly as well, but that's kind of more someone they would expect to kind of take a leap. I think he's been really good over these last couple of weeks. Defensively, I would say Jordan McGee. I think there's times with his game that he's very Frankie Louvu-esque, where He's going to play every single snap on 100% effort. And sometimes it's going to be blatantly wrong with what he's doing, but he's going to be playing fast all the time. So I think he's shown that he deserves more snaps. I think he should be getting more snaps. He only played 24 last week. I think he should be getting more than that. Because again, he plays very fast. He's such a great athlete. And that's kind of why he was drafted as high as he was, or not really as high as he was, but that's kind of why he was drafted in the 5th round. He's a fantastic athlete, and it's always going to take time for linebackers. But, playing behind a Bobby Wagner is only going to help you. I just think him getting more snaps would be great because when he does play, he is making plays.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all knew, you knew, I knew, most people knew that they were high on Jordan McGee when they drafted him. They thought he could play. It was injuries that obviously kept him sidelined, and the fact that they feel like they can't take Bobby Wagner off the field, or they'd really be in trouble. I was thinking a guy like Jacob Martin, because I don't think they expected Jacob Martin to be one of their highest motor players on the team.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he's been really their only pass rusher ever since all the injuries kind of took the edge rushers off the field. But he's been the only one that's kind of consistently getting pressure. I think he leads the team in total pressures right now with 27. That's definitely a guy that, like you said, they weren't really expecting anything out of, but he's kind of stepped in and has played pretty well.
By the way, just out of curiosity, we know that in Madrid, there was, a massive increase in sort of zone coverage and disguising some of those with Quinn. What did you see Sunday night, and just your overall take on Quinn calling the defense versus Joe Witt Jr.?
Yeah, I think he simplified it for them. Less man coverage, which has been something they've needed to, essentially stop doing for a while now. They just could not play man coverage, and they kept trying it, and it didn't really work. So he's played a lot more, just rush 4, drop 7 guys into coverage, keep everything in front of you, and it's worked out. There's been less kind of busted coverages that I've seen. He's done a better job of disguising coverages, kind of rotating from single high to 2 high and stuff like that. So I think overall it's a much more sound defense. I don't think it's good by any stretch, but I think it's a sound defense. It's an NFL defense, and it can give you a chance to actually compete in games, unlike in weeks past where, if the offense doesn't put up 40, you have no chance.
How much better is Sandra still playing more zone?
It's been better. It's been much better. I think, again, kind of having him not play as kind of aggressive, him playing outside a little bit more as well, I think he's been better. It's still, again, not great, but it's much, much better than where it was in previous weeks.
I've talked a little bit here over the last couple of weeks. I was hoping that we wouldn't be doing it, in late November, early December, because we kind of got used to that over the years of looking ahead to the next off season. It's better to do that in January than it is in late November, but we're all doing it to a certain extent. And I think one of the things that's an absolute given, and I'm wondering if you agree, is they've got to pay Tunsil. They've got to extend him. You just only have 6 or 7 of these guys in the NFL that pass block at an elite level. Yeah,
he's elite. He's exactly what they envisioned when you went out and made that trade. It's one of the trades that I don't regret them doing at all. He's still one of the best left tackles, overall tackles in the entire game. He is a necessity to re-sign. He has just been, again, exactly what you wanted. He's continued his elite level of play and is still one of the best in the NFL. And you don't like.
Where is he right now? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious. As a pass blocker, where is he ranked in the NFL right now?
He is 3rd right now in the NFL. You could probably say 2nd. The guy that's in 1st only played 4 games, so I would say he's 2nd overall in terms of pass block.
Who's number 1? Thomas?
Garrett Bowles. Garrett Bowles from Denver. Thomas is right behind Tunsil in 3rd. So.
Yeah, I've been just kind of – the Giants are an interesting team. I mean, it's a conversation for another day, but they actually have some really good players on their team, and he's one of them, and he did not play in the opener, if people recall that, back all the way on September 7th. Real quickly, speaking of offensive linemen, have you seen progress with Connerly Jr.? Do you think he's a legit starting right tackle? Do you think they made a good pick, picking him late in the 1st round or not? What's your early take?
I think it's always still too early to say it's a good pick or a bad pick, but I do think that he has made some significant progress. And I think it's a massive development for this team, because early on it was bad. It was really, really bad. That's to be expected, though, when you go up against, the Giants edge rushers, and you got Micah Parsons and Max Crosby, and you got all of these guys that he's going up against. He was always going to struggle. Moving from left tackle his whole career in college to right tackle, it was always going to be a struggle. But these last 4 weeks, he's been really, really good. He hasn't had a grade below 63. Last 2 games, he's been above 74. So it's been a very, very slow upward trend. And that's obviously always what you want when it comes to players. It's this upward trend from a rookie season, and that's what you want. I'm excited to kind of see how he continues that the rest of the year. But I do think that he's proven that he, is someone that you can kind of hope is your future franchise right tackle.
Talking to Nick Ackridge, senior analyst for several years now at PFF. Nick's a good guy to have on the show. We've had him on for a few years now, and he's a big fan of all of the DC teams. So I talked a little bit about this in the last segment, and it was perfect timing with you coming on. I don't know how much you've followed the numbers. I'm assuming a lot, but I do want your thoughts just on under center versus not under center. Under center right now, and I gave the numbers through last weekend. The top teams in the league record-wise, the top 11 teams in the league in terms of under center snaps all have winning records, and 9 of the bottom 11 teams right now in the league have the fewest number of under center snaps. Now, the Eagles and Chiefs are there. They were in the bottom quarter last year as well, and they ended up in the Super Bowl. But just give me your overall thoughts on under center versus shotgun / pistol.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that I could probably talk about for hours when it just kind of comes to offensive philosophies in the NFL. And the NFL is very cyclical in how this happens. 10 years ago, everyone was operating from under center. And then when you finally get quarterbacks in the shotgun all the time, it blows defensive minds. They don't know how to kind of deal with it. And if you weren't operating from the shotgun, you were basically not great at the time. And then now we've kind of slowly gotten back to under center, 3 tight ends on the field, bringing a fullback back on the field. And so it's very cyclical in how that happens. So right now it does seem as, if you aren't able to operate under center, then you are behind the curve in terms of, offensive production. But I think kind of speaking to what Cliff has done, he has slowly kind of implemented it. It's still very slow, and they still have the fewest under center snaps in the NFL. But when he is doing it over these last 4 games, it has been really, really successful. So it's something that I am kind of watching and kind of hoping that he kind of keeps implementing these things. And I think one thing that I've really kind of noticed from Cliff this year, and I know people have been a little bit down on him, but I think the offense overall has still been pretty good this year. I think it doesn't look as great because, they're always playing from, 2 touchdowns behind, and it's just always going to be tough to kind of compete that way. But I think he's done a pretty good job this year. And he's slowly kind of changed a little bit the things that he's done on offense. He's gotten pretty creative with the run game. Again, this under center stuff is what he's kind of slowly incorporating back into. I thought Sunday night was a great kind of look into, he can, really sort of find a wide receiver and feed him. And we didn't really see that from Terry McLaurin in the past. And they targeted him, I think, 14 times, which is his career high. So that was another kind of thing that I really like to see. So I think he is slowly kind of incorporating this into the offense. And, on Sunday night, it really worked well. And these past 4 games, it's really been working.
That was a career high in targets?
Yeah, tied for his career high.
Wow.
At least for what we've charted at PFF.
Yeah. So why didn't he have more catches than 7?
That's a good question. There was one that in the end zone that was close to kind of like a drop. I think it was kind of like it was a little bit high. We charted that as like a little bit of an overthrow / a drop. There were a few others that were kind of inaccurate from Mariota.
Yeah.
Other good plays that were, he's going up against Patrick Surtain, so there were some good plays from Surtain as well in there. But yeah, 14 targets, 7 catches. Really fantastic day from him.
Yeah. It's a big difference when you have a real wide receiver on the field. That's for sure. Just your overall thoughts on this season, which, you look at the standings and we know how much the NFL changes, forget year to year, it's more week to week. But, Patriots, Denver, top 2 seeds, Chicago being a top seed, Carolina having a shot to win the division. Who do you like right now? Like, who do you see ultimately, on Super Bowl Sunday? Best team in the AFC, best team in the NFC?
Honestly, I've got no clue. Like, I think that kind of speaks to how insane this year has been in the NFL. If you would have asked me last week, I would have said the Rams by far. I think they have been fantastic, but then they look bad against the Panthers, who the week before looked terrible. So to me, none of it really makes sense. I think in the end, I will still kind of lean with the Rams. I really think Matthew Stafford is playing really some of the best football he's ever played. He's up there in the MVP conversation. I think the Packers, and I would put them up there as well, but they also have games where they look completely inept. So it's pretty tough. I think Jordan Love has been playing some great football. The AFC is a complete toss-up. I want to kind of believe in the Patriots. I've always been a Drake May fan, as people have yelled at me a bunch for last year. I think he's been playing great. Obviously, he's up there in the MVP conversation. I don't know if I trust the team as a whole just yet. And they haven't really played a lot of people, a lot of great teams. Personally, I would like to see the Bills back in there, or not back in there, but in the Super Bowl. But if I had to pick right now, I would probably lean Rams in the NFC, and I don't even like saying it, but Bills in the AFC. I don't really trust them either.
Yeah. It's going to be a fascinating January, that's for sure. Well, really exciting down the stretch here. There's so many of these matchups. I mean, this weekend alone, in terms of, they're not mathematical elimination games by any stretch, but the Cowboys and the Lions facing each other, the Steelers and the Ravens in a massive game, and the Chiefs-Texans Sunday night is a huge game. Kansas City can't fall to 6-7, can they, and make the postseason? And the Texans right now, Nick, I for a couple of weeks running, I'm like, if they get in, they could actually win the whole thing. They're that good on defense.
Yep. Yeah, I think it all comes down for them to C.J. Stroud and how well he plays. I think
he played well Sunday, didn't he? I have no idea what his PFF number is, but it looks a lot different than Davis Mills.
Yes, he played okay. It wasn't his best game, but coming back from missing a couple of games, I thought he was pretty good. If that offense just gets just somewhat going, the defense is so good that they can kind of lead them the whole way. And there's just so many teams that are kind of like, I think the Broncos are in the same boat. Their defense is incredible, but I don't really trust Bo Nix at all right now. So it's tough. There's a lot of openings for a lot of teams to kind of make a run.
Thanks for doing this. As always, hope you're well.
Yep, appreciate it. You have a good one.
Nick Ackridge, everybody from Pro Football Focus at PFF_Nick Ackridge. Dan Quinn ready to take the podium stand, and we'll get an update, I'm sure, on Jaden Daniels. You'll hear that when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. Dan Quinn addressing the media out there. Let's head out to Ashburn and hear what he has to say.
And so that's, kind of the energy that I'm looking for going back into practice again. It's easy with this group, man. They love one another. They love to compete. And so there's a hardness of, as a coach, you can tell when a team has a look, like they're ready for the next fight, if it has to go longer, whatever. And so I said, they are, like doing hard shit with people mentally and physically. And that's what this week's about, man. Like getting right back to it. It was my most favorite week of practice last week, just the energy they had, the improvement that we made. And so now that's the chance to go do that again. And we'll dig in hard to do that.
For you, is that something you missed, and do you feel it has maybe energized you in any way?
Missed, yes. Energized, no. Do I like it? Yes. But I would say energized during the game for sure. I would say like the other, like 6 days and like 21 hours, no. But the game part of it is like calling it is a lot of fun. The players energize me. That's honestly the truth of it all. Why I love coaching. I like being around them. I like teaching. And so during the game, like I'm on the trip with them, and so riding it with them. And I want to make sure I'm giving them every chance they can to play at their best.
Is it easier for you to take over that when you have you've built a lot of what you wanted to establish, some of what you wanted here? You have guys in the offensive staff, head coaches over there. Is it easier for you to do something like that now than maybe it would have been, just coming in as that?
Yeah, that's fair, John. And I think that's also accurate because there's other things that come across that you need your time and your attention, but then you're learning the staff too. When you're a first-year coach, you're learning one another and how that routine goes. And so like our staff definitely grew tighter this year. And so now I'm definitely leaning in more onto others. And I think I even, spoke with Nikki one other time to utilize this talented group of guys. And Joe's also been at the very front of that. We have a battle rhythm together that was easy to get into together. And Brian and David and other guys, on the staff to do that, I definitely leaned in hard on them, which would have been harder earlier.
I know in Atlanta you had Kyle Flood and Bob Sutton kind of help out with some of it. Is that setup similar to sort of what you have going with Gardy and Brian Johnson and Joe here?
I say it's probably that times, and I think that's probably true for our league in some ways, Nikki, that that's expanded, that's evolved. If you'd asked me, is it the same as it was in 25, I would say certainly not. And that's a good thing too. Like I enjoy game management, where we're at, the timeouts, when to use time, when to use clock. At the end, when it works, that's a good call. When it doesn't, you're pissed. But as long as you're good with the process you went through to get there. This game had so many moments of even at the end of the game, shot, it wasn't there, throw it out, still saves time for the field goal. Like those were big moments. So, but yeah, Bob and others have been a part of that. But I'd say it's expanded more now. I think that's probably true in the NFL.
Yeah, that's good. Two-parter, since he does it all the time and cheats. You mentioned on the Hard Knocks that you told your team that you guys lost the game, but you didn't feel they were lost anymore. What did you mean by that? And then for the defense, where do you think they've made the biggest strides over the last couple of weeks?
Okay, for the first part, I would say capturing standards together. I think that's what it's about. Of the battle for it. I thought, in an unusual sense, it was maybe our best group game, still with a loss. So it's hard to say it was our best game because you had a loss. But I thought, from a performance, if you didn't have that part, the performance side, I thought this was connected. This was a punt for field position. This was getting a stop. This was making a play. So those were things that I liked. And I saw some people playing some of their best. I like for Samerstill and Connerly. Those were two that really I thought elevated up. And that's what I want to see, like elevation and improvement. So that was the first part. And on the second part, can you repeat the second one?
The defense, where's the big fix?
I think we got a ways to go, but I think playing really hard with less mistakes. I've always thought they were playing hard, and then mistakes. And here's a big play and that. So like I never had questioned that part of it, but having the ability to go fast as you can, but on that tightrope of making the right decisions. And so that's a big deal. And I think we're making progress in that way because I'd never questioned anybody's effort. And no, I think we're going that hard, but staying on that tightrope of less mistakes. I think that's a big deal.
Coach, going up against a unique Vikings defensive scheme this week, is there anything different about how you and your offense go about preparing for Sunday? Yes, you do have to. Some games are like that where there's more things to go through to prepare in different ways. It is kind of some of the fun parts of the NFL. This player can't ruin the game. The scheme is unique. How do you work that at practice? Sometimes when a team has similar schemes, you don't even use cards very often just so you can get the same speed and the same matchups. And then in a game like this where there's some different looks, you want to make sure you have contingencies, go through things. And that's one of the challenges of it for sure.
Dan, you mentioned last week having one of your favorite weeks of practice and kind of pushing the guys to go hard.
Dan Quinn, everybody. No information about Jaden there to start. I don't think. Did we miss it?
They started the presser a little bit. They started the stream of the presser a little bit late, so I'm not sure. I don't think we missed anything because they would have.
Okay,
it would have been
well,
put
if something
out,
comes out of it, we'll let you know. He did apparently say that he's high. His optimism is high about Noah Brown returning this week. So we'll see on that. Apparently he then knocked on wood after he said that.
Oh boy.
So I did want to talk about the Hard Knocks NFC East episode #1 last night. I enjoyed it. I always think those things, HBO in particular, they're so well done. But Nikki Javala, you heard her ask the question about there was the post-game locker room from Sunday night after a 27-26 loss. And he said, quote, "We lost, but we're not lost anymore," closed quote. And you heard him kind of explain what he meant. And he said, he doesn't think that at any point this year they weren't playing hard. I tend to agree with that. Look, it didn't look like they were playing particularly hard against Detroit. In that game in particular was one of the most embarrassing defensive nights in recent NFL history. And look, they've been without a lot of players. We understand that. It's true. But I think for a several week stretch, going back to the Bears game and the Cowboys game and the Chiefs game, it's like, look, if you could just play cleanly, even without your best players on the field, it wouldn't be as bad. And against the Bears, they had the turnovers. They lost the turnover battle 3-0. You're not going to win many NFL games losing the turnover battle that badly. They would have won the game had they lost the turnover battle -2 without the very last turnover in that game. The next week, against Dallas, they're actually, kind of doing a decent job hanging in there. Their defense stinks. They're giving up a lot of points, a lot of yards, but they're moving the football. They're scoring. But it was penalties and drops. And then turnovers, the one that Jaden got hurt on, and then the pick 6 by Mariota. In that game, they had like 11 or 12 penalties. They had like 4 or 5 dropped balls in that game. Then you get to Kansas City. You have a drop pass by Debo that turns into an interception. You can't go into Arrowhead and end up having, 2 turnovers and expect to be in there, even though they moved the football. They were very good on third down in that game. And then came Seattle, and the same thing. I mean, there are a list of mistakes that don't even show up in the stat column, like receivers not running the correct routes. But there were multiple drops. There were 2 turnovers. There were a bunch of penalties in that game against Seattle. And then, ironically, against Detroit, even though they got absolutely smoked, it was the game that came in here afterwards, and I said, well, at least they played relatively cleanly. You know, there weren't drop passes. There weren't penalties that derailed drives. There weren't, turnovers in that game. They just obviously got shredded by a team that could have literally put up 80 in that game had they wanted to. And the game got sideways. So I can feel Dan Quinn. We've all sat here, no matter how bad it's been, most of us, and watched every play of every game. And we know that they've been completely outmatched in a lot of these matchups because of the players they've had to put on the field versus really good teams. They in a row, we didn't even realize the Bears were on their way to 9-3, but Bears, Cowboys, Chiefs, Seahawks, Lions, then the Madrid game against the Dolphins, then the Broncos. The worst possible time to put a fraction of your players on the field and expect to, win. But they didn't play cleanly. They didn't help themselves in some of those games because that Bears game was winnable. The Dolphins game, winnable. But he's right about the Denver game. It was a clean game, and it was their best game, I think, if the Chicago game wasn't. But he was speaking more in terms of clean games. It was their cleanest game and their best overall effort in a loss this year. No doubt about it. We lost, but we're not lost anymore. Let's hope that continues. And, him taking over the responsibilities, we're going to ask the question of what would have happened had he done it sooner. I think my answer will be the same in the future as it is right now. And that is he took it over at the right time. He took it over after they faced Dallas, Kansas City, Seattle, and Detroit in 4 straight games. 4 very high-powered and very capable offensive football teams. He took it over just in time to face the Dolphins, who, let's not forget, were in the red zone 5 times. And against the Broncos, let's not forget, scored 27 points, rolled up 400-plus yards in overtime, yes, and went through Washington like it was a sieve defensively in overtime, 5 plays, 70-something yards in just a few minutes. But there weren't the miscommunications. There weren't the explosive after explosive play. There weren't massive, stretches of can't tackle. I do agree that it's clean. It's looked cleaner. That it's always going to be a different feel when the game is winnable versus being down 31-7 at halftime or 25-3 or whatever it was against Detroit at halftime. The game's virtually over in the first quarter. They are facing, though, on Sunday in Minnesota, a team that for the first time in a while, they're going to face a team that is really struggling offensively. This is going to look more like some of the teams they faced last year at quarterback. Max Brosmer. I don't know if it's going to be him or J.J. McCarthy, but neither one of them has been very good. Now, what Minnesota can do well is they can actually run the football well. Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason are good backs, and they've had some success running the football against teams that can't stop the run. Hello, they're facing one this week. They are a top 10-ish kind of a defense. DVOA right now 11th defensively in the league. Washington has faced, here are the ranks of the defenses. Seattle's 1 per DVOA, Houston 2, Cleveland 3, Rams 4, Denver 5, Detroit 6. Green Bay 7, Tampa 8, Philly 9, Jacksonville 10, Minnesota 11. So Seattle, Denver, Detroit, Green Bay, Philly twice upcoming in Minnesota. So 8 games against the top 11 defenses in the league they will have when the season is over. And by the way, they'll face Dallas playing much better defensively after the trades on trade deadline when they face them on Christmas Day. But Minnesota can defend and they can run the football. They're favored, people, just so you understand. I understand it's a nice break not to face, the best teams in the league over the stretch that they have. And even if record-wise they weren't the best teams, when they faced them, still very capable teams. But the Vikings and the Giants over the next 2 weeks are licking their chops too, thinking, finally, we get a team. Minnesota, over the last few weeks have faced Seattle, the Packers, the Bears, the Ravens, the Lions, the Chargers, the Eagles. That's been their stretch. So this is coming up for air for them as well, facing our defense. I mean, wouldn't it be just like this defense this year for J.J. McCarthy to show, hey, that's why they picked him in the first round. 22 of 27 for 293 and 3 touchdowns. We'll see. Not going to be an easy game, but it's easier than what they have faced, that's for sure. If Quinn says anything else of note, we will tell you what it is. When we come back, I want to finish up with why the Carolina Panthers might win the Super Bowl. And then the all-time record was set on Thanksgiving Day. I'll tell you what that all-time record was when we return. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget, Window Nation has extended their year-end sale. That means 50% off all window purchases and a chance, if you choose to finance your purchase, to pay no interest for 5 years. That's right, no interest until the year 2030 if you decide to go that route. Window Nation is the best when it comes to handling the customer. 96% customer satisfaction rating, A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. #1 on the Forbes list of window installation companies in the United States recently, and over 45,000 5-star reviews. They've installed 3 million windows in the United States. They do it right, and they're doing it right now with a great deal. Call them at 866-90-NATION or go to windownation.com. Mention my name. The first step is they'll come out and give you a free, no obligation in-home estimate. They'll do that in an hour or less. If you decide to move forward with them, they'll install your windows in a day or less. They make that promise as part of their deal. 866-90-NATION, windownation.com. So, did you know that this year is set up, Max, for the Carolina Panthers, who have been to 2 Super Bowls, never won one? They lost to the Patriots the first go-round, right, in their first Super Bowl. And then they lost to Denver with Cam Newton against Peyton Manning in their second Super Bowl. But each time the Panthers have made a Super Bowl appearance in the past, 3 very specific things have occurred before they eventually got there. Those three things are Ohio State winning a national title during the previous campaign when the Panthers had a losing record. All right. So when Ohio State wins the national championship the year before and the Panthers had a losing record that year, that's one criteria. The other is that the next season, the Carolina Panthers opened with a game against Jacksonville. I mean, what are the odds of that? They opened the season with games against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and in each of those seasons, J-Lo filed for divorce. All 3 of those things have happened entering this season. Ohio State won last year, the national championship. Carolina had a losing record last year. Carolina opened with Jacksonville, and J-Lo divorced Ben Affleck. So that's the formula for the Patriots, for the Panthers, making the Super Bowl. You know what, man? Anything's possible this year. I mean, they could win that division and potentially be a 3 seed. I mean, who knows what the record of the NFC East winner is going to be? I mean, they could play a home game. And I'll tell you what, we've said this about the Panthers going back to, I don't know, early October. They can run the ball, and they're good on defense up front. There's actually a formula there that works in the postseason. Run it, stop it. The other thing that I wanted to mention before we get out of here today,
real quick,
is
600-1, by the way.
They're not going to the Super Bowl.
Hey.
600-1 to win the NFC Championship?
No, that's to win the chip.
Yeah, right. So this is just making the Super Bowl. Got it?
Yeah, I'm looking. Conferences. They are
90-1, I'm going to guess.
I'm seeing 80-1.
Okay, not a bad guess.
Pretty good.
We talked about this leading up to the Thanksgiving Day game between the Chiefs and the Cowboys, that it was more likely than not going to be the most watched regular season game in NFL history. Well, it was, and by a lot. The numbers are out on last Thursday's Dallas 31-28 win over the Chiefs on Thanksgiving Day. 57.23 million people watched the game, the most watched regular season game in NFL history. And it's really not even close. The most watched game prior to that game was at 44 million, I'm seeing. It shattered the previous record by 36%. 36%. It was also a 47% higher audience than last year's Giants-Cowboys Thanksgiving Day game. The audience peaked with over 61 million viewers. So that puts it up there with championship game audiences. Wow, 57 million. The previous record, here it is. Yeah, so the previous... no, this is the previous Thanksgiving Day record. I'm sorry. The Cowboys-Giants in 2022, 42.059 million. I would guess, though, that's probably the previous record for the most watched game as well. Look, you put the Cowboys on and you put them against the new Cowboys in terms of TV ratings, the Chiefs, you're going to get an audience, and they did. All right, back tomorrow. Chris is up next.